Okay, I think we're live. We're live? We're live. Yes. Let me just double check real quick. Yep, we're good. We're good. I'll just give a couple minutes for people to grab their headphones, because people are gonna need their headphones for this. Because the first thing we're reading is some smut. Also, I need to get my background music playlist going. I forgot to do that, actually. Let me get that going, because I actually have something. Yeah, got a whole playlist ready. Frickin', play all. That works. Let that. Repeat. Shuffle. Hopefully that's not too loud. Let me know if the background music's too loud in comparison to my voice. Yeah. Okay. I'm just kind of curious. How many people are watching this right now? I gotta check that. Oh, Boo, hello! I'm glad you're, oh my god. Well, at least you're prepared. Hello, okay. Okay, so... oh, good lord. Okay, so basically, how this is gonna go... okay, first of all, happy 15th anniversary to, Fire Emblem Blazing Sword, Fire Emblem 7, however you want to call it. Today's a special day, of course. We're reading fanfiction, because all I ever write for is kind of Fire Emblem 7, because all I write about is frickin' Matthew. So I thought this would be a good way to start things off. So basically, how this is gonna go is I'm gonna read through each fic that I've written and published to AO3. Like, every single one, except for one, but that's for personal reasons. Basically, we're gonna go through each fic in chronological order based on their initial publication dates. I've got my list of them right here. I kind of went through each fic to figure out which one came first. So without further ado... oh man, this is crazy. Oh, these tags are beautiful. You know what you're getting yourself into with the first fic. Oh boy. And while I read through, I'll probably be doing some commentary on what I've written as well. Enduring Soul, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Don't mind the actually, do mind the tags, because they are very telling of what's gonna happen in this first one. Anyway. Yeah, anyway. You know what? Let's just start. Let's stop beating around the bush. As I said, I'll be doing a little bit of commentary about the things I've written. Kind of like a looking back and sort of thing. And plus, at the end, I'll be doing an early reading of something that's never been published before. So let's fucking go. Let's go. Let's just go. All right. First off, we have Thief of My Heart. This one was actually published on Tumblr before I got an AO3 account. The only reason why this was published on AO3 in the first place is because apparently the third chapter was too long for Tumblr to handle, and that is certainly what she said. I'm sorry. But anyway, yeah, so I published it on AO3 so that I could properly give Thief of My Heart the continuation it needed. And also, fun fact, Thief of My Heart started off as a one-shot, but then I got more ideas, and then it got up to 7 fucking chapters. I had to actually split chapter 2 into chapters 2 and 3, and chapter 6 into chapter 6 and 7, because those were also too long, so that's also a thing that happened. So, this fic is just long as fuck. It's one of the longest I've written. I think the longest I've actually written was Familiar Face longer? I don't remember. I think it did have 8 chapters, but did it have over 9,000 words? I don't remember. Anyway, let's just start. Thief of My Heart. When Kieran learns of a powerful spell taking over the minds of the heroes summoned to Zenith, she decides it's time to take matters of the heart into her own hands. But yeah, as I said in the notes, this was a self-insert fic. When I posted it on Tumblr, Kieran was straight up just named PK, but for the sake of publishing it to AO3, I changed PK to Kieran. But just keep in mind when I read this off, just pretend Kieran is me, and pretend that Kieran is the one fucking Matthew, because that's what's supposed to be happening. See this face? This face right here? That girl's fucking Matthew. Just letting you all right now. And just also letting you know right now, this is part of a series. Kieran's sexual escape ads. Every fic, that's supposed to be me. That Kieran is supposed to be me. I'm just saying. Just saying. Okay, anyway, let's go. Let's just go. Alright. Chapter 1. Oh, please! Okay. Chapter 1. My word is their command. Oh boy, here we go. I can't believe I'm doing this. Okay, let's go. It was a quiet night in the kingdom of Asker, and a certain question had been nagging Kieran's mind ever since she learned how to summon heroes. It just so happened that tonight that she finally found a private moment to talk it over with Commander Anna. God, why am I doing this? I can hardly read. Hey, Dashnak, welcome to stream! Here we go. Here we fucking go. We're starting off with some smut. It's great. So, why is it that heroes will listen to whatever I say? Kieran inquired Anna as they walked to their rooms after dinner. For some heroes, I sort of understand their loyalty, but I'm not that great of a tactician. I'm sure someone like Robin or Soren would question my strategies by now. And some of the more morally questionable ones haven't tried any assassination attempts on me. Seriously, what gives? It's quite simple, actually, began Anna. A protection spell was cast over the whole realm centuries ago to aid the great hero. If heroes had complete free will, they wouldn't be completely loyal to the kingdom. Who knows what might happen then? Okay, I forgot to mention, this fic was actually inspired by a friend's Tumblr post. I actually put in the description of the stream pretty much all the inspirations, whatever they are, of every fic I've written. So if you want to, like, refer back to maybe what inspired me to write certain things, then just take a look in the description. I've put in links. Some of the inspirations are they're a little silly, I've got to admit, but this one was pretty legit. Anyway. A sudden realization overcame Kieran, and she groaned at the thought. So, what you're saying is, the only reason none of these heroes kill me for my incompetence is because I happen to be the chosen one and they're under the influence of some mind control magic? You're saying that like it's a bad thing. Oh, hey Cross, welcome to stream, dude. Haven't seen you in a long time, dude. We're reading fanfiction today. Hope you like a lot of smuts. Because that's what, like, 90% of the stream. I'm sorry. Anyway. You're saying that like it's a bad thing. Anna laughed and patted Kieran on the back. Just don't think about it too hard, alright? Your word is their command, Kieran. They'll follow your orders no matter what. You're safe. Kieran sighed. This is all sorts of weird, she thought. These heroes could beat me to a pulp at best if they wanted to. If things were different, I would have been dead a long time ago. Having all these people under my control is just... Wait. Under my control? Kieran stopped in her tracks and bowed her head deep in thought. Does that include... Anna stopped as well and cocked her head at Kieran. Something wrong? I was just thinking. Kieran spoke with the most innocent tone she could muster. Does this whole my word is their command thing carry over outside the battlefield? Yes, of course, Anna replied. Why wouldn't it? Okay, cool! Kieran beamed. I'm gonna get going. I've got some business to attend to. Thanks for clarifying things, Anna. Anna opened her mouth to reply, but Kieran was already long gone. Long gone and running off in the direction of Matthew's room. Oh, here we go. Here we fucking... Oh yeah, this is gonna be an interesting one. Yeah, lots of smut happening. Lots of smut. Alright. With a racing heart and shaky knees, Kieran knocked Matthew's door frantically. Who is it? Matthew's voice carried over from the other side of the door. It's Kieran, she replied. I just wanted to talk to you about something. Okay, give me a second. Kieran could hear Matthew's footsteps approach the door, then a click, and the door swung open to reveal the tall, red-headed young man. Okay, here... This is the only time I mentioned Matthew having red hair. I couldn't really decide on what hair color I should, like, describe it as. Every other fic I've written for him, though, describes him as having brown hair. I don't know, this one was... This first fic weirdness. First written thing weirdness. Anyway. He gestured to Kieran. Come in. Kieran stepped inside as Matthew closed the door behind them. He sat at the edge of his bed while Kieran pulled up a chair and sat a few feet in front of him. Kieran made occasional eye contact with him as she filled with the hem of her robes. The two of them sat in what seemed like endless silence until Matthew asked, "So, what did you need?" Kieran tensed up at the sudden question and cried out, perhaps almost too loudly, "Oh, nothing! I mean, I do need something! Why else would I want to talk to you in private like this?" She laughed nervously and averted her gaze as Matthew gave her a quizzical but expectant look. "Come on, Kieran. You can do this!" Her lips pursed shut. She couldn't say a thing. "Just tell him you want to fuck him. If what Anna said was true, which it most likely is, he'll say yes!" Whatever word she wanted to say got caught in her throat and suffocated her. "Say something, damn it!" She swallowed them back down and sighed in defeat. Matthew started to get up from the bed. "Look, if it's not that urgent, you can— Wait! Huh? Before he could fully stand up, Kieran pushed and pinned him to the bed with herself straddled on top of his waist and her hands holding his arms at his sides. "Don't give me that book, Enduring Soul. Don't give me that book." Matthew looked up and locked eyes with Kieran. It took Kieran a second to realize her current position. She covered her face with her hands. Blood rushed to her face as she stammered. "Sorry, Matthew, I didn't mean to— oh, jeez, I'm really, really sorry." Ah, fuck. Scrolled too much. I scrolled too much. Sorry about that. Where were we? Okay, there we go. When Kieran didn't hear a response or feel any struggling from Matthew, she slowly uncovered her face and stopped with something she didn't expect. Matthew was— blushing? Oh, yeah, it was subtle, but it was definitely there. Oh my god, boo, please. Is that spell at work? Wondered Kieran. I guess there's one way to find out. Kieran leaned in close to Matthew's face and whispered, "Matthew, please." She gulped. "Please kiss me." Matthew nodded. He placed his lips on hers, barely touching them at first. He closed his eyes. Kieran loosened the tension throughout her body and closed her eyes as well. She pressed her lips more firmly against his. So soft. Matthew wrapped his arms around Kieran's body, held her close and kissed her deeply. So warm. His right hand traced down her back and fondled her ass. She could feel his pulse increase in rhythm along with her pounding heart. Something poked at Kieran's entrance. Here we go. Here we fucking go. Oh my god. Oh my god, I'm getting so embarrassed just reading this out loud to you guys. Oh god, what have I done? Kieran's eyes shot open and she sat up. Matthew took quick, deep breaths and opened his eyes. His entire face was flushed. He smiled at her and asked, "Anything else you want?" Kieran's heart practically burst out of her chest, and her opening grew wet at the thought of taking things further. Oh, Enduring Soul. She looked at Matthew dead in the eye. "Fuck me. Now." Wow, so commanding. Matthew smirked as his hands— fucking god motherfucker. Yeah, god damn it. This is gonna happen a lot. There we go. There we go. Wow, so commanding. Matthew smirked as he slipped his hands underneath Kieran's robes. "But yeah, I can do that for you." He leaned in for another kiss while his hands helped slide Kieran's robes off of her. Kieran in turn tucked her fingers underneath the hem of his trousers, then under the waistband of his underwear. She lifted herself up slightly and pushed his garments down until Matthew's hard erect cock sprung up. Okay, but this part, that sentence right there, I was when I first wrote this, I was so embarrassed to write the word cock. I was like, I can't go through with this, but yes, I did. I did, and it was wonderful. Anyway. Her focus shifted to his erection. She let her fingers wrap around his shaft. Gently, Kieran's hand rubbed up and down his throbbing member. As you can see, I did a lot of research on finding different words for the word cock. I think I might have overdid it, to be honest, looking back. Oh my god. I'm sorry, Enduring Soul. I'm sorry. So good, Matthew moaned breathlessly. Kieran stopped for a moment. Matthew blinked up at her in confusion. She held Matthew's hand and guided it to her belt buckle. "I'll keep going if you return the favor," she whispered into Matthew's ear. Her warm breath made his muscles twitch. A small bead of pre-cum leaked from the tip of his length. Speaking of research, I had to do a bit of research on, like, how to write arousal, for both guys and gals. There's this one Tumblr post that, really helped me out with that, and I've got to thank the person who— Shout out to Smut101 on Tumblr for helping me, write my first smut fic. I'm sorry, anyway. At least I think their Tumblr username is Smut101. Either way, their posts really helped me with writing my smut. They've got some good resources, I'm just saying. Yeah, of course. Yeah, a small bead of precum leaked from the tip of his length. There we go. The words, "as you wish," barely left Matthew's lips as he undid Kieran's belt and helped her out of her pants and underwear. He took one of his fingers and traced along Kieran's sensitive, wet cunt. Kieran let out short, quiet moans and shivered to Matthew's touch. Oh, boy. Come on, Matthew, urged Kieran. You can do better than that. Matthew teased her hole with his finger and slowly put it inside. Kieran's waltz tightened around Matthew's finger as he slid it in and out of her. She resumed rubbing Matthew's cock, this time syncing her rhythm with Matthew's fingering. The two of them quickened their pace, their leg muscles tense. Their hot breaths and moan names filled the room. Matthew, Kieran begged and whimpered, I need your dick in me right now. Oh god, just fuck me. I'm sorry, this is so embarrassing. I'm sorry. Why did I let myself do this? My face is so red, I can't, but I must! I promised I'd do this! I promised I'd do this! I'm so red, oh god, I can't. Hold on one sec. God, my coffee's cold. I brewed some up this morning and I just let it sit. Ugh. Yeah, it is kind of too late for regrets. Here we go. Matthew grunted in reply and removed his finger from Kieran's dripping sex. Kieran got off of Matthew and stripped herself from her remaining clothing while Matthew did the same. Matthew grabbed Kieran and forced her onto the mattress, face up, as he positioned himself on top of her. She spread open her legs, revealing her gaping cunt before him. Matthew teased Kieran's puffed up clit with the head of his cock. Are you ready? He asked. Kieran nodded. Do it. He shoved his entire length into her, and she yelped with pleasure as his girth filled her. Oh god. Matthew held Kieran by the hips and pulled her into him with each thrust. Kieran gasped. I keep forgetting to fix that typo. I'm gonna do that later. Someone remind me to do that later, because I've noticed that a while ago. Kieran gasped each time as his head hit her G-spot. Kieran sprung up and planted her lips on Matthew's neck. Nibbling and sucking on his flushed skin, she marked his neck with one hickey after another. Feeling Kieran's supple lips and playful bites on his skin made Matthew thrust even faster. Once she was satisfied with her work, Kieran flopped back onto the bed, exposing her front. Matthew took the invitation and pressed his lips on Kieran's erect right nipple, softly teasing it with his tongue, lightly grazing against it with his teeth. With his right hand, Matthew pawed Kieran's left breast, massaging it, lightly pinching and pulling and flicking the nipple with his nimble fingers. He continued driving his dick deeper and deeper into her as he played with her sensitive mounds. She couldn't take it anymore. Her back arched, her hands clutched to dear life onto the sheets, her muscles between her thighs contracted around Matthew's cock. Surrendering to the sudden explosion of pleasure, she cried out and collapsed into the bed, her juices leaking from her hole. Hi! Hey! What's up? I'm reading smutty fanfiction today, Mystery. I'm glad you could make it. We're in the middle of the sex scene. I'm glad you could make it. Oh boy. Matthew was close behind. He straightened out his back and placed his hands back on Kieran's hips. His thrusts were more hard and abrupt, but he kept the same swift pace as before. He leaned into Kieran's body until he was heaving into her ear. She could barely make out Matthew, swearing and gasping her name under his breath. Kieran, oh, fuck, Kieran. Huffing and puffing with each pound, Matthew managed to let out a breathless, I'm coming, right before pulling out a shower in Kieran's stomach with white blobs of cum. Oh. What am I doing with my life? What am I doing? The two of them lay next to each other on the bed, sweaty and heaving from all the activity. Same! What am I doing? After catching his breath, Matthew turned to Kieran. I'd like to wash up. How about you? Kieran gave a small nod. She couldn't find the energy to do much else. My god. Alright, we're after sex scene, it's fine. Not wanting to put clothes back on after making such a mess of themselves, Matthew and Kieran snuck around the castle naked. They made their way to the royal baths and back to Matthew's room afterwards without a hitch. While they gathered their belongings and dressed back up, Kieran said casually, I'd better go back to my room, huh? Matthew spun around. What? No, it's okay if you stay here for the night. Kieran sighed with relief and smiled. Good. I didn't want things to end there. Kieran couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in the bed. Well, as much as she could, considering Matthew was there beside her. She turned over and stared at his peaceful sleeping expression. She pouted. Deep down, Kieran knew this wouldn't happen under normal circumstances. In his world, Matthew's heart would belong to someone else. Neither him nor Kieran even belonged in the world of Zenith in the first place. In the end, there just seemed something wrong with it all. As her thoughts raced, Kieran's eyes focused on the hickeys on Matthew's neck. Without thinking, she lifted her hand and gingerly let her fingertips caress each one. Her mind cleared. Right here, right now, Matthew was hers, and Kieran was his. She wouldn't let him or herself forget that. Ever. With one last peck on Matthew's cheek, Kieran drifted off to sleep. Okay, so that's the end of Chapter 1. Like I said, this Thief of My Heart was a one-shot. This first chapter actually ended with Matthew and Kieran have reached support rank S. That's how I ended the one-shot. But I decided to continue it for like 6 more chapters. So that's not the end yet, folks. That's not the end for this one. Chapter 2, Self-Reflection. So, like I said before, Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 were, at first, one big chapter, but it got a bit long, so I had to split it in half. So, if it seems like this chapter cuts off at a weird place, that's kind of why. Anyway, Chapter 2, Self-Reflection. Okay, Celica. Kieran gestured loosely toward the enemy soldiers in front of her team. She had to make sure everyone in the army's ready for battle at all times, but lewd thoughts kept popping into her head. Fuck, if Matthew were tied up in that position. Just attack the one over there. Okay, see you in a bit. Are you sure? Celica turned around. That's Reinhardt, Kieran. I will most likely not survive his attack. It's fine. It's fine. Kieran waved her hand dismissively at Celica. Oh man, what if you were blindfolded? Just go for it. Celica turned back toward Reinhardt and gulped. If you say so. With a swift motion, Celica opened her tome and cried out, Ragnarok! Flames surrounded the man and his horse, but they stood strong, as if the fire did not affect him at all. Fucking motherfucker. God, motherfucker. God, mother shitting. God damn it. Okay, there we go. A gag wouldn't be too bad either. A light blush rose to Kieran's cheeks. Fuck! God damn it, I keep messing up my scrolling. Yeah, there we go. With an even bit swifter motion, Reinhardt opened his tome and roared, Dire Thunder! Lightning bolts crashed down on Celica, leaving her collapsed and scorched body in their wake. A collar and leash would look so hot on him, too. Kieran! The rest of Kieran's team, Azura, Xander, and Jenny, turned toward their strategist and yelled in unison. Kieran snapped back to reality. She looked in Celica's direction and noticed her body on the ground. Kieran facepalmed and mumbled to herself, God damn it, not again. She raised her hands and called out to the others. Come on, guys. We're surrendering. The 3 remaining heroes grumbled as the light enveloped them and transported them out of the trading tower and back to the castle. After resummoning Celica, Kieran huddled together with the group. I'm really sorry, guys. Kieran bowed her head in disappointment. You've been like this all week, said Xander. Are you coming down with a fever? Jenny put a hand to Kieran's forehead. Your face is all flushed. Kieran stepped back and put her hands up. No, I'm not sick. I guess I've been distracted lately, that's all. Yeah, distracted at the thought of Matthew's dick. Me every day, honestly. Me every day. I'm sorry. Celica crossed her arms and took a deep breath. Well, please straighten yourself out soon, Kieran. I know it can be tough being our tactician, but we cannot afford to keep going on like this. Right. Kieran sighed. Shit! There we go. Let us know if there's any way we can help, Kieran. Azura put her hand on Kieran's shoulder. Kieran looked up at Azura and smiled slightly. Thanks, I appreciate it. Kieran clapped her hands together. Anyway, you're all dismissed. As soon as the 4 heroes dispersed, Kieran dashed off back to her room and shut the door behind her. She fumbled with her belt buckle as she made her way to their bed. Once her belt finally loosened, she laid on the bed and reached down her pants. She gently rubbed her clit and fingered her wet opening. Her breaths puffed out from her parted lips as she quietly moaned Matthew's name over and over. The thought of Matthew bound and gagged crossed Kieran's mind again. She bucked her hips and increased the rhythm of her fingering. Her chest grew warm and her entrance grew more wet to the thought of Matthew completely submitting to her. That wasn't enough. Kieran's mind wandered to the thought of herself submitting to Matthew. Herself blindfolded, Matthew's hands caressing her, teasing every sensitive spot with his fingertips, keeping her guessing which part of her would receive his loving touch next. Oh, she was close. Her heart was pounding faster and faster. Her hands would be bound as well, leaving her entire being vulnerable and at Matthew's mercy. Her nipples would perk up and her entrance would leak in anticipation. Please make me come, Master, she would say. I've been a good girl. Oh my god, I can't believe I wrote this. I can't believe I wrote this. Oh god, what am I doing? So close. Kieran slipped another finger into her hole. Matthew would reach down and would watch her squirm underneath him with his every touch. Not yet, he would whisper in her ear. I want you to really beg for it. Tell me how much you want it. Let me hear you beg like the dirty whore you are. Almost there. Kieran! The bedroom door slammed open, revealing Commander Anna on the other side with a stern look on her face. Her expression soon changed to one of bewilderment when she locked eyes with Kieran. Oh. Kieran froze. Okay. This next part is one of my favorite lines from this fic, honestly. She wanted to say so many things. It's not what it looks like. Ever heard of knocking? What the fuck? But the only words that came out were, can I finish, please? I love that part so much. Anna nodded as she quickly stepped out and shut the door. I'm sorry, but I love that part so much. I really do. After some time passed, Kieran opened the door and gestured to Anna to come in. The two of them sat at the table in the middle of the room. Anna leaned forward and rested her head on her hands. Well, that explained a lot. Kieran sat up and placed her hands on her lap. What do you mean by that? She cleared her throat. Anyway, you wanted to talk to me about something, right? Right, Anna smiled. Your performance as a tactician has been very poor recently. I was going to discuss why that was with you, but it seems like the answer is pretty obvious. What are you talking about? Kieran tightly gripped her robes. Anna leaned back in her chair. You seemed pretty happy when I told you about that spell a week ago. Maybe a little too happy. I can only assume you had some fun after you ran off. Oh, come on, Anna, Kieran said. It's not like Matthew and I actually did anything. Oh? Anna crossed her arms and smugly looked at Kieran. Who said anything about Matthew? Kieran slapped both of her hands in front of her mouth. She slid both hands up to cover her face and leaned down until her face was on the table. You won't tell anyone, will you? Anna patted Kieran's head. Relax, I won't tell anyone. I'm pretty sure some people already noticed the hickeys anyway. Fuck! Groaned Kieran. Wow, I was actually just kidding about that. You really went at it, huh? You two really went at it, huh? Anna giggled. Kieran shot her a glare. But in all seriousness, continued Anna, you need to get focused on the battlefield again, Kieran. If that means you have to get in bed with Matthew, then do it, for Asker's sake. Blah. She paused. Wow, never thought I'd actually ever say something like that. Hey, foreign soul! Welcome to the stream! We're reading fanfiction I wrote! To celebrate the 15th anniversary of Fire Emblem Blazing Sword! This is great! Oh, God. Okay, Kieran raised an eyebrow. So, you're okay with this? Yes, Anna nodded. Just promise me you won't let your personal affairs interfere with your summoner duties from now on. Kieran sat back up and saluted Anna. You can count on me, Commander! Anna smiled at Kieran. Good to hear. Anna stood up from her chair and approached the door. She placed her hand on the doorknob and looked back at Kieran. By the way, if you need some special equipment, just let me know, okay? I'm sure I can give you a good deal. With a wink, Anna opened the door and left the room. Kieran blushed. Wait, what? Everything about Chapter 2 was good. I enjoyed reading Chapter 2. Anyway, Chapter 3. Who's really in charge? Oh boy, here we go. This one was good. This one was a fun one to write as well. A lot of this was fun to write, honestly. Anyway. Oh boy. Oh boy, boy, boy. Kieran sat at her table and looked over the goods she brought from Anna. Never thought I'd get my hands on a wooden dildo, but here we are! In front of her were a dildo, a leather collar, a chain leash, 2 handkerchiefs, handcuffs, and a wooden paddle. The longer she stared at each item, the warmer her face grew. Fuck, I can't do this! She slammed her hands into her face. It was hard enough asking Matthew for sex in the first place. What the hell was I thinking buying all this last night? She lifted the paddle. Is he even into spanking? Fuck if I know! I personally liked writing that part too. I love that part so much. I don't know why. I just do. She slammed the paddle down onto the table and face test. Sure, I really want to be the dominant one and do all this kinky stuff with Matthew at some point, but... Kieran stood up and slammed her hands on the table. No, I gotta do this. I promised Anna I wouldn't be distracted by my sexy imagination anymore. The next day, Kieran searched the castle high and low for Matthew. She eventually found him wandering one of the castle's empty halls. Matthew! Kieran waved and ran up to him. What are you up to? Good evening, Kieran. Matthew smiled and waved back. Just taking a stroll around the castle. How are you? Pretty good. Just finished going through the training tower with Celica and the rest. Kieran reached around and cupped her hand on his ass. It's nice to see you after such a long day. I can say the same to you. Matthew took Kieran's free hand and guided her until her back was against the wall. Matthew pressed his body against Kieran's and kissed her. In response, Kieran wrapped her arms around him. She slided? I think that's supposed to be slid. I gotta edit that. Her hands down until they were underneath his trousers and groping his ass. Matthew firmly pressed his lips against Kieran's and held her close. He softly bit Kieran's bottom lip and deepened the kiss. Kieran squeezed Matthew's bottom one last time and brought her hands up to his back. She gripped onto his shirt, softly moaning as Matthew's tongue teased hers. Matthew broke away from the kiss and chuckled. Would you like to continue somewhere more private? I thought you'd never ask. Wow. That's all Matthew could say after seeing Kieran's toys on the table in the middle of the bedroom. Damn it, I forgot to hide those, Kieran mumbled to herself. She shrugged at Matthew and sighed. Well, I guess I ruined the surprise. All this, Matthew gestured to the pile, is for us to use? Kieran twirled a lock of her hair around her finger and blushed. But, yeah, I just thought it would be fun? She quickly put her hands up. Of course, we don't have to if you don't want to. No, it's alright. Matthew walked to the table and picked up the handcuffs. We can do this if you'd like. Kieran straightened her back and tensed up. Okay, yeah, sure! She walked up to Matthew and held out a hand. Hand me the handcuffs and lay on the bed. Matthew nodded and did as Kieran commanded. Kieran turned to the table and reached her hand over the pile of toys. She sweated bullets as she hovered her hand over each one, hesitating to actually grab one. Matthew cocked an eyebrow. Kieran, are you okay? We don't have to do this if you're not comfortable. Hey, Tan5, we're reading fanfiction today! And yes, it's my face. It's my cute face. Anyway. Let's see. I'm totally fine! Kieran grabbed the collar and handkerchiefs and ran to the bed. So, let's get started? Matthew spread his limbs out onto the bed and looked at Kieran expectantly. Kieran climbed on top of him and straddled his hips. She shrugged off her robes, removed her gloves, and then placed them on the floor. With shaky hands, Kieran positioned Matthew's arms above his head and locked the handcuffs onto his wrists. Hey, Angel Wing! Welcome to the stream! We're reading fanfiction! Yeah, anyway. Let's see. With shaky hands, Kieran positioned Matthew's arms above his head and locked the handcuffs onto his wrists. The handcuffs don't feel uncomfortable, do they? Asked Kieran. Matthew moved his wrists around. Nope, they're fine. Okay, good. Kieran let out a sigh of relief. She then took the collar and fastened it around Matthew's neck. Too tight? Too loose? Matthew slightly lifted his chin and grinned. Feels just right. Seeing the thin collar around Matthew's neck made Kieran's heart beat faster. She placed her fingertips on the collar on Matthew's neck. Blood rushed to her face. He looks way too good with that collar. This is too much, Kieran thought. She leaned down to peck Matthew's neck, then quickly scooted down to get to the rest of Matthew's body. Kieran traced her fingertips over his waist and kissed his chest. One peck after another, as she slowly left a trail of kisses down Matthew's abdomen. She slipped Matthew's shirt up until his stomach was exposed. She planted her lips on his bare skin, leaving tiny purple love marks and Matthew letting out satisfied moans. As she continued to mark Matthew's belly, Kieran placed a hand on Matthew's forming erection. With her other hand, Kieran lifted Matthew's shirt further up until his chest was exposed. She worked her way back up, leaving more hickeys as she did so. Kieran was so busy, she didn't notice Matthew's arm movements until... Click. Click. Kieran looked up to see Matthew's hands free from his handcuffs and still holding a set of lockpicks. What the... Matthew shoved Kieran off of himself, rolled on top of her, and pinned her arms over her head with one hand. As soon as Matthew's eyes locked with hers, Kieran's heart raced. She gulped. I cannot. Kieran's heart raced. She gulped. You should have been more careful, you know. Matthew gently rubbed Kieran's breast and gave her a cocky grin. It wasn't smart of you to not check me for lockpicks. Kieran blushed from Matthew's teasing. Matthew, let me go! If you don't, I'm gonna kick your ass! Kieran... Oh my goodness gracious. Matthew squeezed her breast. Oh, really? He took the handcuffs, briefly let go of Kieran's hands, and clicked the handcuffs into place around her wrists. You're not even trying to get away. Happy Fire Emblem Day! Hey, Kaoru, welcome to the stream! Oh boy. You're not even trying to get away. I already read that. He leaned in until his face His face and Kieran's were only centimeters apart. Looks to me like you're enjoying yourself. Kieran furrowed her brow and averted her gaze. Silent treatment, huh? Matthew sat up and grabbed both of the handkerchiefs. I guess you won't mind if it stays that way, then. Kieran looked at Matthew with wide eyes as he balled up one of the handkerchiefs. Matthew, don't you dare— Matthew stuffed the balled-up handkerchief into Kieran's mouth and tied the other one around her head to keep it in place. What was that? I couldn't hear you. He patted her cheek. I'm gonna take good care of you tonight. Kieran gulped as she felt her entire body heat up. It was almost— oh my goodness gracious. This chapter— this was a good chapter. I'm just like, oh boy. Okay. Yeah, seriously, the lockpick ability was kind of— yeah. I kind of wish I kind of explored that a bit more in my other fics. I should do that. Anyway, Kieran gulped as she felt her entire body heat up. She was almost certain her heart skipped a beat just then. Kieran slightly bucked her hips into Matthew's crotch. Oh, is there something you want? Matthew rubbed his erection against her pants. Let me hear how much you want it, then. Matthew grinded against her, and she moaned in response. Her fists clenched and her toes curled as Matthew's hard-on rubbed against the fabric. Matthew quickened his pace and put a hand on each of Kieran's breasts. Kieran couldn't hold back her moans as Matthew rubbed and squeezed her chest. Matthew took the gag off Kieran's mouth and kissed her. You're making cute noises. Oh, please! Kieran's muscles tightened. She moaned breathlessly. Matthew, please fuck me. I want you so badly. Matthew nibbled Kieran's ear and snarled. Not good enough. You're gonna have to be a bit more convincing. Hey, Sam! Hi! Oh my god, I can't believe you're here for the fanfiction reading. Oh god, I missed you, dude! You missed some big stuff in the past couple of Fire Emblem streams. Also, Dart died in last stream. I'm sorry, I had to tell you right now. I'm very sorry. But yeah, a lot of other stuff happened. You should check out the past streams you missed. Anyway, okay, yeah, okay. Okay, he grabbed Kieran's hips and thrusted faster. Oh boy. Please let me have your cock, Matthew. I want all of it inside me. Kieran cried out. Good girl. Matthew fucking motherfucker. I can't. Matthew unbuckled Kieran's belt, slipped off both of his and her pants and underwear, and rammed his erection into her. Oh my god. I can't believe I wrote this, man. And rammed his erection into her soaking wet cunt. He thrust it into her swiftly, and Kieran moaned louder and louder with each thrust. Matthew tied the gag into Kieran's mouth again. We don't want anyone hearing us, right? Kieran's vision blurred and from the overwhelming pleasure. With Matthew's sudden dominating presence and her restraints, Kieran's core tightened. Blood rushed to her chest and face. Her hands closed into fists. She groaned into her gag louder and louder until the pleasure washed over her. With one final yelp, Kieran came. Her entire body sank into the mattress. Sam, you know me too well. You honestly know me too well. Like 90% of the things not 100% of the things I wrote actually do have Matthew in all. All of my fics have Matthew in it. I just realized this right now. Holy shit. All of them do, in some way or fashion, involve Matthew somehow. Whether he's a minor character or just straight up getting fucked. Oh, good lord. Okay, anyway, where were we? Right. Matthew thrusted roughly into her a few more times and pulled out. He scooted up, quickly stroked his length, and let his cum rain down on Kieran's face. He took a few seconds to catch his breath and smiled. You look so beautiful right now. Matthew kissed Kieran's forehead, untied the gag, and took the handkerchief out of her mouth. Had fun? Kieran nodded weakly and smiled as Matthew unlocked the handcuffs. Yeah. Kieran rubbed her wrists. How'd you know I'd enjoy being the bottom? Matthew rolled his eyes and confessed sarcastically. Lucky guess, I suppose. You were being pretty subtle. I had no idea. Kieran stuck out her tongue at him. Oh, and one more thing? Matthew undid the collar and put it on Kieran's neck. He whispered it into her ear. You're mine now. Okay, the end of this chapter. This part kind of wrote itself. I didn't plan for that ending at all when I first wrote it. I was like, Matthew, what the fuck are you doing? I don't know where to go from here, but I figured it out. I figured out some way to continue it off from here. So here we go. Matthew's safekeeping the illusion with for closet sessions and certain experiment. Oh my god, my dude! Oh my god. Anyway, chapter 4, under lock and key. Here we freaking go. Oh my god, this... Okay, and this is also kind of where things kind of get a bit dramatic towards the end, but we'll get there when we get there. Matthew got too cocky. Oh my goodness. Okay. The next morning, Kieran cracked open her door and scouted out the hallway. Looks like the coast is clear. She opened the door wider and pulled her undershirt collar up to conceal the collar Matthew forced her to wear. Her foot was barely out the door when a cheery voice projected through the hallway. "Good morning, Kieran," greeted Anna. She ran up to Kieran and eyed her neck. "Hey, isn't that the collar you—" Kieran covered Anna's mouth with her hand and put a finger to her lips. Kieran frantically surveyed the surrounding area, then sighed. Relieved no one was around. Bees! It's hip to fuck bees! God damn it! God damn it, Tampine. Oh my god. Let's see. Kieran frantically surveyed the surrounding area, then sighed, relieved no one was around. She took her hand off the commander's mouth. "I didn't want anyone finding out about me and Matthew, remember?" Anna raised an eyebrow. "Yes, but what does that have to do with—" "Oh, taking things outside the bedroom?" She winked. "Kinky." Kieran pulled her hood down, trying to hide her embarrassment. "It wasn't my choice! I mean, I agreed to it, but—" Kieran put her hands together. "And wait, can you please make sure that no one sees me like this? Especially not Niles or Walter. I'm begging you." Okay, this line right here. I planned for either Niles or Walter to show up in this chapter, and depending on who showed up, would change the tone of the fic very, very much. Because Walter is Walter. If you haven't played Sacred Stones, just look him up on the Fire Emblem wiki. Yeah, and Niles is he's just Niles, you know how it be. So, yeah, the tone of the fic would change completely depending on who I decided would show up in this chapter. So, yeah. So, you'll see who I ended up picking to show up in this chapter. So, yeah. Anyway. Kieran should ask Anna for Victoria's Secret undings. I bet she has some in stock! Oh my god! Yeah, they're great. Well, Anna rubbed her chin. "I can't guarantee to keep an eye on everyone, but I can make sure Niles and Walter are out of the loop at least." "Thank you so much, Anna." Kieran bear-hugged the commander and dashed off. "I'm gonna get some breakfast and start today's training regimen. See you later!" Over the next couple weeks, Anna kept up with her end of the bargain, making sure Kieran was not in either Niles or Walter's sights. As for Kieran, she spent her days concealing her collar, keeping her secretive submission from everyone. At night, she was with Matthew, kept under his heel, answering to his beck and call. Other than a few close calls, usually involving Kieran forgetting she even wore a collar in the first place, everything was going well for her. That is, until she accidentally and literally bumped into a certain someone one afternoon. Sorry about that!" Kieran apologized to the man in front of her. "Oh?" He turned around, revealing himself to be the flirty archer Niles. He smirked. "Ah, Kieran, do be more gentle with me next time." "Ah, fuck me," grumbled Kieran. Niles bowed. "Your wish is my command, summoner." Kieran pointed at Niles. "You know very well I didn't mean it like that!" She sighed and started walking away. "Anyway, I have important business to attend to." Niles hastily caught up to her and walked beside her. My, what's the rush? It's been so long since we've talked, Kieran, and the commander was quite adamant about not letting me see you at all. He stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Perhaps you're hiding something from me?" What do I have to hide?" Kieran lifted the collar of her undershirt, hoping Niles wouldn't notice. "You gotta admit, I'm an open book." "Yes, I can agree with that." He pointed to her neck. "That must be why I think it's obvious there's something suspicious about your neck." Well, I'm not that much of an open book." I love that part. I love that part. It was good. Kieran forced a laugh. "Oh, would you look at the time? I'm late for the thing I needed to do." "You don't have to leave just yet, Kieran." Niles leaned forward and whispered into Kieran's ear. "I'm sure your master wouldn't mind if I had some fun with their pretty little pet for a while." Kieran pulled her robes closed and squealed in embarrassment. "Niles!" "Ha! I knew it!" Niles leaned in closer to Kieran's face. "So, who is the lucky person who gets to keep you under lock and key, He paced back and forth in front of Kieran and continued. "Is it that porcelain prince you serve? Or perhaps it's that vixen of a woman who calls herself the Blue Crow? She does have a dominating aura about her." Kieran buried her face in her hands. "Niles, please!" "What about that spy?" Niles raised a finger. "Matthew, was it? You two seem to have hit it off lately." it would not be at all surprising if you... Okay, good talk, Niles! Kieran sidestepped the archer and finger-gunned him as she walked away. Bye! Oh my god, Sam. I honestly love that line right there. I love this part. I just like, bye! And Kieran just tries to peace out of there. I love that part. I honestly do. Anyway, before you go, Kieran, Niles placed a hand on Kieran's shoulder. Allow me to say one more thing. Niles gave Kieran a stern look. No matter what, do not forget to stand up for yourself. You may be the bottom, but you can't let anyone or anything get in the way of what you want. Niles? Alright, I'm done. Niles pushed Kieran forward. Go out there and give Matthew a pleasurable night. Just not too pleasurable. Kieran tugged down on her hood and blushed. God damn it, Niles. Still red-faced from her encounter earlier, Kieran stood in front of Matthew's door. Come on, Kieran, pull yourself together. She slapped her cheeks, then knocked on the door. Matthew, it's Kieran. You ready? The door creaked open. Matthew looked at Kieran with a sullen face. Hello. Kieran's eyebrows furrowed. Matthew, why the long face? Matthew undid the collar around Kieran's neck. Kieran, we shouldn't be doing this anymore. A pit formed in Kieran's stomach. What are you talking about? Matthew lifted Kieran's hand and placed the collar in her open palm. I know your feelings are true. Matthew looked at Kieran in the eye, but I can't say the same for myself. Kieran kept silent. She didn't know what to say. All she could do is stare down at the collar in her hand. She swallowed and bit her lip. Yeah, I guess you're right. She started to tremble. Her hands tightened into fists. Tears welled in her eyes. It was dumb of me to think you actually loved me, huh? Kieran, that's not... Before Matthew could finish his sentence, Kieran pulled down her hood over her eyes and sprinted down the hallway. Matthew stepped forward and stretched out a hand. Kieran, wait! He froze, staring down at the empty hallway. What am I supposed to do? Oh boy, here we go. Ah, man. Yeah, I had this kind of plot point in the back of my mind since the beginning, but like, I didn't really know how to get from point A to point B, and here's how we get from point A to point B. Okay, Chapter 5, Under Lock and Key, Another Side. So this one is, if it's not going to be obvious, it's going to take place, it's basically Chapter 4 from Matthew's point of view this time, and kind of explaining why he acted why he did. Matthew being a filthy thief after all. Oh. Okay, here we go. But yeah, this part, I actually kind of liked writing for Matthew, having stuff from his point of view. I should do that more often, honestly. Anyway, just gotta wear this all the time without getting caught? Kieran pointed to the collar. Matthew nodded. Yep, not only will it be good stealth training for you, it's something I'm sure you'll enjoy. He winked at with that last remark. Actually, Kieran is the tactician. Kieran is the default name of the tactician in Fire Emblem Heroes, so I kind of went along with that. So, yeah, that's kind of a thing. Anyway. Anyway. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Kieran blushed and felt the collar around her neck. I guess it's a little embarrassing just thinking about it. If you're really not that comfortable with it, you don't have to do it. Matthew patted her head reassuringly. No, I'm totally cool with it. Kieran waved her hands in front of her frantically. Besides... She leaned in closer to Matthew's face. I'll get rewarded later if I've been good, right? Matthew stroked her hair and smirked. Yes, you will. He kissed her cheek. Let's get some sleep. You've got a busy day tomorrow. Yep. The next morning, Matthew scouted out the hallway outside Kieran's bedroom. All clear. He looked back at Kieran, her laying in bed sleeping soundly. Matthew smiled at the sight and silently stepped out of the room, gently closing the door behind him. Matthew kept close to the walls and occasionally glanced into his surroundings, making sure no one followed him on his way back to his room. When he arrived there, he laid in bed and stared at the ceiling, his eyes closed as his thoughts traced back to the night before. Kieran's flushed face, her muffled moans, her everything crying underneath him, crying out for him to pleasure her. God damn it, I can't believe I wrote all this. Despite all that, Matthew couldn't shake one thing, one person off of his mind. God damn it, I can't believe I brought this up too. I'm just like, I feel sad. Her gentle smile, her radiant voice, her lovely crimson hair, his dear Layla. Oh my god, I feel bad for Matthew. Despite all that, he couldn't forget her. Despite all that, he doubts his feelings for Kieran. What am I... you know, Sam, considering in this particular fic, Kieran's supposed to be my self-insert, I'm kind of like, well, you know, she could. Cough, cough. Also, You also missed it last stream, but guess who I gave Apha's drops to? I'm sure that's pretty obvious. Anyway, back to... Yeah, anyway, Anyway, Matthew sighed and rose from his bed. I shouldn't be thinking about this now, he thought. He left his room and headed for the training grounds. He had no excuse to shirk his duties. Every day after that was the same. Training during the day, sex with Kieran in the evening, self-doubt about romantic feelings in the early morning, lather, rinse, repeat. It seemed like the cycle was never going to end until one day when Matthew's curiosity got the better of him. Increases maturity! Yeah, that was also a thing that happened. Anyway. Let's see. Yeah. Matthew, wait! Matthew heard his familiar voice call out to him as he approached the door and he had never seen before in the library. He quickly turned around to see it was Sharina. Sharina? What's wrong? Matthew cocked an eyebrow at the princess. You're not allowed in there, Sharina frowned. It's off limits to heroes. Okay, one quick thing. In Fire Emblem, for those of you who haven't played Heroes, Sharina is one of the princesses of the land of Asker, and she mentions at the end of one chapter that two of her best friends are heroes, and the two of them are Matthew and Rai from Binding Blade. Just putting that out there. I also like writing Matthew and Sharina's friendship. It's very important to me, which is why I also wrote a fic about those two. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Anyway. Let's see. You're not allowed in there, Sharina frowned. It's off limits to heroes. Matthew looked back and scanned the door. Huh. Sharina pouted and put a hand on his shoulder. Matthew, I know that look. She wagged a finger at him. Don't you dare try to get in there. Oh, Sam. Anyway. Huh? Matthew pointed to himself and said sarcastically, Me? Try to enter a forbidden room? Sharina, I would never. She rolled her eyes and let out a sigh of fake exasperation and shook her head. In all seriousness, Matthew, behind that door lies every secret about summoning heroes imaginable. There's no telling what would happen if that information fell into the wrong hands. Matthew turned his head back to the door, but Sharina placed her hands on his cheeks and forced his face back to her direction. No! Banned Matthew! Lol, nice. Matthew, fucking motherfucker, I can't read. Why am I doing this if I can't read? Matthew removed Sharina's hands from his face and laughed. Sharina, I promise you, I'm not going to try to enter that room. I think it's pronounced Ray because his Japanese name is Ray. You know what? That actually does make sense. It probably is pronounced Ray. God damn it. Who's a callin'? No one important. Anyway. She narrowed her eyes. You don't need to worry about that. Matthew patted her back. You don't need to worry about it. Matthew patted her back. Okay? Yeah, leave a freaking message. That's what I freaking thought. Anyway. Sharina sighed. Okay, I trust you. Sharina waved to Matthew and walked off. See you. Yep, see you. Matthew waved back and watched her leave the area. Once she was gone, he examined the key he pickpocketed from his best friend. Sorry, Sharina, but a spy like me has to know these secrets. Matthew spent the next few days doing careful reconnaissance of the library and the surrounding area, keeping track of everyone's schedules and noting any blind spots caused by any desks and bookshelves. Once he finished formulating his plan and told Kieran he would be busy that night, Matthew sprung into action. He snuck around the empty halls of the castle and entered the library through its least used entrance. Nimbly weaving through the library's tall bookcases, Matthew made it to the forbidden door. He pulled out the stolen key, put it into the keyhole, and unlocked the door. Aw, thanks, Sam. It's just that I don't usually do facecam during gaming streams. Brings in a weird crowd. But you know, if not too many weird people come in during my streams, then I'll consider it for the future. Anyway, the only thing that was on the other side of the door was a single tattered old book resting on a stone pedestal. Matthew lit a torch inside the room and closed the door. He carefully leafed through the pages, skimming through the information until one heading caught his eye. Mind manipulation. Matthew read through the passage. Let's see. Spell created to protect the great hero. Heroes cannot harm their summoner. Heroes follow all orders of the summoner. Wait, what's this? Matthew traced a finger underneath the sentence as he read it aloud to himself. If the summoner chooses to do so, they may form a bond stronger than steel with a hero of their choosing, regardless of where the hero's true feelings may lie. Matthew read through the sentence over and over again in disbelief. No, Matthew thought. This can't be true. This is crazy, but he thought back to Layla. Finally, his confusion over his feelings was justified. There was a reason for the self-doubt. There was no need to be so conflicted anymore. He found his answer. Yet, why did his heart feel so heavy? The next night, Kieran knocked on Matthew's door as she always did. Matthew couldn't bring himself to give her a bright greeting. I know your feelings are true, he said, but I can't say the same for myself. Kieran ran off crying. Her last words filled Matthew's mind. Did she know all this time? There was no way she'd say something like that if she didn't know about the spell. Was she outright manipulating him? He shouldn't have trusted her. He should have never tried saying anything to her when she first arrived in Asker. Letting her even get an inch close to him was a mistake. He should have never, for even a second, ever let go of Layla. Unable to clear his head, Matthew just sat outside the castle's front gate, hoping that the fresh air would put him at ease. A few moments later, a warm voice called out, "Matthew!" Sharina. Sharina plopped down next to Matthew and smiled with that bright smile of hers. How have you been doing? You and Kieran doing well? Matthew cocked his head at Sharina. Kieran? Why do you ask? You two have been spending so much time together lately. Sharina giggled. You two must be really close now, huh? Matthew shrugged, not looking in Sharina's direction. I suppose we used to be. Sharina gave Matthew a concerned look. Used to? What happened? The image of Kieran's tear-filled face crossed Matthew's mind. It was dumb of me to think you actually loved me, huh? Those last words left chills down his spine. It's the spell's fault, he thought. These are not my true feelings. I don't truly feel this way about her. Right? God damn it, Tanpai! He turned to Sharina and cracked a wry grin. You were right, Sharina. I should have never went through that door. I'm sorry. Before he could finish his sentence, Sharina wrapped her arms around him. Don't blame yourself for this. It's not your fault. She held him tighter. It's not anyone's fault. After a few seconds, Sharina let Matthew go and looked him in the eye. Please take time to think about your feelings. I know it's confusing right now, but I'm sure you'll find the answer you're looking for. She rested a hand on his shoulder. Okay? He sighed and nodded. Okay. Sharina gave Matthew one last reassuring pat and returned to the inside of the castle. Eventually, Matthew did the same and returned to his room with a slow heaviness to his gait. He opened the bedroom door, shut it behind him, and trudged to his bed. He flopped onto the mattress and looked up to the ceiling, staring at nothing. A weight pushed down on his chest. A lump formed in his throat. A whimper escaped his lips. For the first time in a long time, Matthew cried. Aw. I'm personally proud of the end of this chapter. I just like how I wrote that part. It was so... I really enjoyed how I wrote that. I don't know. Anyway, Chapter 6. So, as I mentioned before, earlier, Chapter 6 was actually... Chapter 6 and Chapter 7 were just one big chapter, but I had to split it up. So, again, if Chapter 6 kind of ends off at a weird parts, you'll know why. Anyway, Anna's plan. Oh, man. There are parts of this fic that I really enjoyed writing. Parts of this last chapter that I really enjoyed writing. There's a lot of good scenes here, I think. Anyway. I've been writing fanfiction for a while, but, I only really started, like, doing it on a regular basis since, like, past November. So, like, it's been about, like, 6 months since I've been doing fanfics on the regular. Anyway. Anyway. Anna sat in the war room, contemplating the maps and soldier miniatures laid out on the table in front of her. She idly played with miniatures as she waited for a certain someone to enter. It's been a few days since Kieran and Matthew's encounter, and Anna saying she's worrying about Kieran's current depressed state is an understatement. The doors opened slightly and Sharina poked her head inside. Commander? You needed something? Sharina. Anna sat up and gestured to her. Come in, we have much to discuss. Sharina pulled up a chair and sat next to Anna. What's this about? Anna picked up two miniatures and placed them in front of Sharina. You know about the situation between Kieran and Matthew, correct? Sharina lowered her head. Yes, I do. I mean, they seem to get along so well, and now... Anna nodded in agreement. If Kieran doesn't get her act together again soon, she knocked over one miniature. The army's doomed. Anna put a hand on Sharina's shoulder. I know you're concerned about Matthew as well. She stood up from her chair and put her hands on her hips. So, that's why I have a plan and I need your help. Sharina rose from her chair. Of course, I'll do what I can. What do you need me to do? Anna huddled with Sharina. Okay, listen carefully. Here's what we'll do. Alright. Anna? Kieran entered the war room. To her surprise, the room was completely empty. Kieran glanced back at the clock. Anna did say to meet me here at noon, right? She should be here by now. Kieran searched the room. Commander? You in here? Oh, yeah, I feel that. That was kind of the same for me, too. I was always afraid of, like, writing characters, you know, out of character, but after some practice and getting into the flow of things, I managed to, like, gain some confidence with that and wrote more and more. So, yeah. Anyway. A damp cloth was clamped over Kieran's mouth and nose by a person behind her. She raised her arms to pry the hand away, but the person used their other arm to hold them at her sides. Kieran wriggled as best she could out of her attacker's grip, but it was no use. Her mind clouded up, and all her strength was starting to fade away. Sorry for tricking you like this, Kieran. As she faded out of consciousness, Kieran could have sworn she had recognized her attacker's voice. Meanwhile... Matthew knocked on Sharina's bedroom door. Sharina? It's Matthew. Come in! Sharina called out from the other side of the door. The door's unlocked! Matthew walked inside, and Sharina greeted him with a bright smile on her face as usual. Thanks for joining me for lunch, said Sharina. Want me to get you a glass of water? Matthew nodded slightly and pulled up a chair. Sure, thanks. Sharina walked over to the other side of the room, grabbed a water pitcher from the grabbed a water pitcher from the shelf. There should be the word "and" there. Good lord. Matthew, I'm really sorry about the other day, Sharina said as she poured the both of them a glass of water. I shouldn't have brought Kieran up. It's fine, mumbled Matthew as he stared at nothing. You didn't know. Sharina walked over to Matthew and set the glass in front of him. Thank you. Thank you, he said. He sipped the water as Sharina continued the conversation. You know, you and Kieran are my best friends, and I want both of you to be happy. I can't bear to see the both of you so sad. Yeah, I know. Matthew tried his best to concentrate, but he could hardly keep his eyes open. His muscles started loose, and he rested his head on his hand. Sharina, what was in my drink? Sorry, Matthew. Sharina smiled sadly and whispered, but please promise me you'll cooperate when you wake up, okay? What are you... Before he could finish his sentence, Matthew slumped over the table out cold. Okay, so... Here's the thing about Matthew and Sharina's friendship. The thing is, I had Ken and Matthew to not really trust most people. Oh, hey, Otago! Welcome to the stream! Yes, we're reading fanfiction today. That I've written! But anyway, as I was saying about Matthew and Sharina's friendship, Matthew doesn't really trust that many people, but he trusts Sharina, like, to the max, because she's just so genuine that he doesn't really have that much of a reason to doubt her. He knows that she'd only do something bad if she had like a really, really, really good reason to. At least that's how I had Ken in their friendship to be. So, honestly, this next part right here kind of, yeah, I just love their friendship so much. I like the idea of their friendship so much. It's just so cute. Anyway, hey Ivy, welcome back. Anyway, I kind of missed a bit of chat. Yeah, you know, for the sake of the story, you know. Anyway. Kieran groggily opened her eyes. She tried raising her hands to wipe them, but she quickly realized her wrists were bound together behind her back. Panic rose inside her and sobered her up from her unconscious state. She scanned her surroundings. There were wooden crates of varying sizes stacked all over the room. A row of small windows lined up on one wall near the ceiling. Must be a storage room, Kieran thought. The next thing Kieran noticed was that she wasn't alone. She was tied back to back with Matthew, who was bound, gagged, and unconscious. He's here too? But why? Kieran tried to get his attention. It was then Kieran realized she was gagged as well. She struggled, hoping to loosen the ropes wrapped around her and Matthew, and cried out for help as she did so. Kieran groaned as her entrance grew wetter from her struggles. Damn it, Kieran! She swore at herself. Now is not the time! Okay, but honestly, same! I'm sorry. Same. Like I said, I know this is my self-insert, but same. Oh my god. Anyway, moving on. Shut up, Sam. Anyway, a groan came from behind Kieran as she felt slight movement. Matthew slowly raised his head and his eyes shot open. He tried moving his arms and legs and surveyed his surroundings, just as Kieran did moments earlier. He turned his head and raised his eyebrows when his eyes met Kieran's. Before Kieran could do something in response, the door to the room opened. Anna and Sharina walked inside. Kieran and Matthew let out confused, muffled cries in unison. "Morning, you two!" Anna waved. I know, it's weird that you guys are tied up like this." "You don't want to tell me, shut up! Shut up! Y'all can shut up!" My face is so red, I can't. Okay, hold on. Oh my god. I fucking can't, my dudes. I fucking can't. I wrote this stuff and I'm just getting all blushy and shit. This is so bad. Oh my god. Anyway, whew, it's getting hot in here. Okay. Let's see. Anna and Sharina approached Kieran and Matthew, kneeled down and removed their gags. What's going on? Kieran questioned. Sorry, but we were concerned about you, Sharina said. So the commander came up with this plan to maybe clear things up between the two of you? It's kink shame day! Honestly, today is a good day to kink shame because there's a lot of kinks to shame. Oh my gosh. So the commander came up with this plan to maybe clear up the things up between the two of you? If we told you what we were up to, who knows if you would have complied? Kieran and Matthew looked at each other. Both of them didn't know what to say. Alright, so here's the deal. Anna leaned down to make eye contact with Kieran and Matthew. The sooner you kiss and make up, the sooner we'll untie you. Alright? Anna winked. Alright? Matthew nodded. Okay. Okay, but this right here. Remember how earlier Sharina said to Matthew, promise me you'll cooperate when you woke up. He didn't reply, but he kept that promise because those two are best friends and I love their friendship so much. Like, I'm just so proud of that little line right there. I'm just like, oh my god. He agreed to this plan without hesitation. It's just like, oh my god, I love writing their friendship so much. So good. Okay, anyway. Kieran hesitated for a moment, but nodded as well. Great. Anna stood back up. We'll be waiting right outside. Holler if you need us. She gestured to Sharina. Let's go. Oh my god, Sam! Sharina nodded to the commander and stood. She turned to Kieran and Matthew. I'm sure you two will figure it out. She followed Anna out of the room and shut the door. Alright, and that's the end of chapter 6. On to chapter 7, which is just a continuation. Chapter 7, Kiss and Makeup. Okay, here we go. I do have a bit of author's notes at the end of this one, but whatever. We'll get there when we get there. Kieran and Matthew sat in silence in the storage room for what seemed like hours until Matthew finally spoke up. Look, we aren't going to get anywhere if we don't talk this out. On the count of 3, let's just say whatever's on our minds. I personally love this part. Kieran pursed her lips, then sighed. Fine. Oh my god, hit me, please. Alright, Matthew took a deep breath. 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, Matthew said. I'm horny, Kieran cried. Matthew blinked. He whipped his hand around. Are you serious? I can explain. I want to apologize for what's been going on too. Kieran turned her head to Matthew. But right now, I'm tied up with a really cute guy, and trying to free myself earlier just made me more horny. It's just a really sexy situation, dude. Matthew groaned. Gods, why? He inhaled. Look, let's get apologies out of the way, then we can take care of your problem. Alright. Oh, why is that statement not a surprise? Alright, I'll go first. Kieran cleared her throat. There's this spell that... Matthew interrupted. Already know about it. Go on. Wait, how do you know... Kieran paused. Never mind. Not important. Look. I'm sorry for taking advantage of the spell like that. I should have at least tried to respect your feelings. I forced you into a relationship without even thinking about how you'd feel about it. I was being way too selfish. Kieran thought back to Niles' words from a few days ago. You can't let anyone or anything get in the way of what you want. She took a deep breath. But at the same time, I want to be selfish. I want you all to myself. The moment I was summoned to ask her and saw you, I knew I wanted to be with you. You're just a really smart, cool guy, you know? You don't have to butter me up like this, Kieran, Matthew chuckled. I'm not trying to, Kieran blushed. I really feel this way, Matthew. I really love you. That's why I was so sad when you told me you didn't feel the same. In all honesty, I should have expected that. She frowned and said in a low voice, Nah, I did expect that. I knew from the start this wouldn't work out, but in the moment it was nice. Matthew closed his eyes and bowed his head as he tried to formulate a proper response. I apologize for what I said it back then. I should have been respectful of your feelings too. Matthew, if you don't love me, you don't have to say you do to spare my feelings. Kieran grimaced. Besides, I know about Layla. You loved her deeply, don't you? Oh my god, Sam, please! Ah, fuck me. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Yeah, okay, we got there. There we go. There we go. Okay. Matthew sighed. Yes, I do love her. I can't deny that. However, Matthew wriggled until he could hold Kieran's bound hands. I love you too. I can't deny my feelings for you either. Honestly, I was heartbroken after I said what I did. Seeing your face filled with tears was too much. If something were to happen to you or for some reason we can't be together, I don't know what I'd do. Kieran, genuine or not, these are my feelings and I can't run away from that. Matthew turned his head and smiled warmly. I love you too. Matthew, Kieran smiled. Thank you. Oh my god. Hello! Yes, that's exactly what's happening here, Lewis. Hello, welcome to stream. So, Matthew cleared his throat. Are you still aroused or... Yes, Kieran said, exasperated. I'm sorry, but I love that part too. I really do. Is that so? Anna opened the door and stepped inside. Sharina followed in behind her with her head bowed as if she didn't want to make eye contact. But, jeez, I completely forgot you guys were still out there. Kieran tried her best to come up with something to say next. So, just how much did you guys hear? Sharina squeaked. Everything. Her face was bright red. Like, everything. Oh my god. Kieran looked away with her face beet red. Matthew rolled his eyes at her, then turned his attention towards Anna and Sharina. Care to help us out here? Sure, let's rearrange some things for you. Anna untied the rope binding Kieran and Matthew together. She and Sharina helped the both of them to their feet and pushed them together so that their fronts were touching. Bomb! Matthew gave Anna a concerned look. Don't worry. Anna grinned as she retied Kieran and Matthew's bodies together and tied their ankles. She received a strip of cloth from her pocket and balled it up. Open up, Kieran. Kieran did as she was told, and Anna stuffed Kieran's mouth with the cloth. She then produced another cloth strip from her pocket, then tied that around Kieran's head to keep the balled up cloth in place. Fuck. God damn it. Almost done. Anna locked eyes with Sharina as she held onto the hem of Kieran's pants. Ready? Sharina walked over to Matthew and placed her hands on the hem of his pants. Yeah, I guess. Anna grinned wildly. All right, now. The two of them pulled down Kieran and Matthew's pants at the same time, exposing their nether regions. Oh, God. Matthew, I'm sorry! Sharina kept her eyes shut. Kieran and Matthew looked at each other in surprise and confusion, then narrowed their eyes at Anna. She cockily grinned at them. You're welcome. Anyway, one last thing. She carefully, Anna tipped Kieran and Matthew over so that Kieran was laying on her back with Matthew on top of her. Oh my god. Kieran's face turned bright red as she squirmed underneath Matthew. Matthew's chest and legs warmed up as he felt Kieran move underneath him. Kieran, have fun, you crazy kids! Anna smacked Matthew's ass and walked out the door with an embarrassed Sharina following close behind. A light blush rose to Matthew's cheeks. Kieran noticed something else rise too. Huh. Noted. Remember how in an earlier chapter, Kieran was wondering if Matthew was into spanking? Well, here's her answer. Oh my god. Oh my god. Anyway. Oh my god. Everything about this last chapter I love. It's just tying everything together, and it's just so good. I'm really proud of myself for this last chapter. Kieran wriggled in arousal underneath Matthew. She bucked her hips against Matthew's forming erection, to which Matthew responded with low moans. Matthew kissed Kieran's gagged lips as he grinded against her. His kisses worked their way from her lips to her cheek, then to her neck, where he sucked and nipped on her sweet skin. Kieran moaned Matthew's name into her again. Her heart beat like crazy as her breast rubbed against Matthew's chest. She spread her legs, presenting her dripping sex to Matthew. Oh my god! Oh my god! I'm not gonna put it on Amazon and make money off of it! Oh my god! I might have to change some names here and there, and maybe I will, but I don't know. Okay. Oh my god, Sam! He accepted the invitation and rammed his throbbing cock inside Kieran, moaning in ecstasy as her walls closed in around his erection. Matthew pushed into her faster and faster. Kieran cried out with pleasure as Matthew's cock slammed into her. She tightened her fists, hands as a fist, and curled her toes. Her core tightened up more and more. Until one thrust from Matthew sent Kieran over the edge. All the tension loosed up in Kieran's body as she caught her breath. Oh my god. What have I done? Fuck, Kieran, I'm close. Matthew drove his hard-on deeper into her wet cunt. His body heated up as he approached closer and closer to climbing. I'm so fucking close. He pounded harder into Kieran and asked her breathlessly, "Want me to come inside?" Kieran nodded vigorously. Alright. Matthew slowed his pace and rammed into Kieran as hard as he could with each remaining thrust. With one last forceful thrust, Matthew cried out as his hot liquid spewed out from his cock and filled Kieran's hole. Oh my god! I'm not particularly proud of that one. I feel like I could have written that better. Anyway, he collapsed onto Kieran, gasping for air. Matthew smiled weakly and kissed Kieran's neck. Enjoy yourself? Kieran nodded and nuzzled Matthew's face. Matthew chuckled and continued to plant kisses on Kieran's face. Right here, right now, Matthew was hers and Kieran was his. They wouldn't let each other forget that. Never again. The end! Okay, that was my very first fic that I published onto AO3. This one was completed over the course of like a few months, but yeah, oh boy. Alright. And here's my author's notes. It's finally done. Thank you all so much for joining me on this wild ride. What started off as a one-shot became something that snowballed into a big mess that I love very much. And I still love it very much. I know this isn't the best fic, and there's so many things I'd fix. Like, bunches of typos that I never got around to fixing. But hey, I enjoyed writing it. Also, Kieran's prob's gonna get pregnant. I don't know. Well, either way, story's over. Who cares? Well, their story never really ended yet because I did continue it later with a few more stories, but we'll get to those when we get to those. Alright. Next up, we have my next fic. I've got, like, a bunch of these. Hold on. Let me see if where is it? No, those aren't bookmarks. Hold on. Where's my... There we go. Works. Okay, so next up is... okay, this fic. Yes, there's more! Yes, there is more! Okay, this one. That is not the intended use, sir. This one's weird. Okay. As you can see, it's a crack fic, has pretty much no plots. This one was inspired by, a couple of Tumblr posts that my friend showed me. Yeah. This one was... Oh my god, this one... Don't take this one too seriously, guys. Okay. Summary. Matthew really shouldn't listen to Kieran's lewd observations. This one... Oh, boy. Yes! Yes, it would, Sam! Yes, it would! Alright, here we go. Here we freaking go. This one is just silly. This one's just really silly. Although Kieran was the type of person to find humor in anything, Matthew had no idea why his knife was suddenly so amusing to her. After enduring a couple days of Kieran bursting into a laughing fit every time she saw the weapon, Matthew finally asked her, "Alright, what's the deal with my knife?" Kieran snorted, "Oh my god, you really don't know?" Matthew shook his head. "No, of course I don't. It's just..." Kieran held back her laughter and pointed to it. "Haven't you noticed its hilt looks like a dick?" For a second, Matthew's mouth hung open. He wanted to say something in response, but all he could muster was... What? Oh my god. Kieran held out one hand while covering her mouth with the other. Look. hand it over. Matthew put the knife in her hand and gave her a puzzled look. See? Kieran pointed to the pommel. This part looks like the tip. She traced her finger along the handle. And this part's the shaft. She wrapped her fingers around the handle and stroked along its entire length. Huh. Girth and length aren't that bad. Could make a good dildo. Matthew blushed at the last comment. Okay, that's enough, he said as he snatched away the knife. Kieran lightly poked his arm and grinned. Can't unsee it, right? I'm not going to play into your silly games, Kieran. Matthew turned away from Kieran and glanced at the knife hilt. He gripped the hilt a little tighter, getting a better feel of how it fit in his hand. Gently, he moved his fingers up and down on the handle. His body heated up at the thought of actually doing something with this information. Matthew sighed and put the knife away. Oh my god! Yeah, the music totally fits! God. Oh my god, Sam. Accurate. No, there's no way he'd do something so lewd. And yet... Need some alone time, Kieran whispered. Matthew stepped back. No, why would I? He furrowed his brow at her and started walking away. I'll see you later, Kieran. I have more important things to do than feed your dirty imagination. Kieran waved goodbye to him. Okay, bye, Matthew. Have fun. Later. Matthew laid in bed, twirling his knife in his hand. He stared at the hilt. Kieran's words raced through his mind as he examined it. With a frustrated huff, he set the knife down on his nightstand and stared at the ceiling. Kieran is such a child, he thought. I'd never use it for something like that. He closed his eyes and tried to forget the conversation, but his mind wandered to the thought of the hilt inside him, its girth filling his hole, the pommel hitting him in just the right spot over and over. Oh my god, I can't believe I wrote that. Matthew's eyes shot open, and he craned his neck up to see his dick pushing against the fabric of his pants. He let his head drop back down onto his pillow and pinched the bridge of his nose. Oh, God's why? He picked up the knife and gave it one last look over. PK regretted this. I regretted this a long-ass time ago, dude. This is gonna bug me for a long time if I don't try this now. I can't believe I actually wrote this, though. Matthew slid his pants and underwear off and rubbed his erect cock. He took deep breaths and relaxed his muscles as he carefully handled the knife by its guard. Slowly, Matthew inserted the knife into his entrace. I can't believe I wrote this without him using some kind of lubricant. That would hurt. Now that I think about it. Let's see. Matthew inserted the knife into his entrance. His breaths and heartbeat picked up their pace as he did so. Once he could feel the pommel touch the G-spot, Matthew thrusted the knife in and out of his hole. He continued rubbing his length as he directed the knife to its target. Oh my god. Use the knife in her presence, make a weapons. Oh my god. Sam. Matthew quietly moaned as his toes curled and his body grew hotter. He drove the hilt into his body harder and deeper. His back arched and his moans gradually increased in volume. As his erection stiffened, Matthew stroked faster and tightened his grip. He swore under his breath, "Damn you, Kieran, this shouldn't make me feel so damn good." We have the... Yeah, you know, when I wrote that, I was like, is the G-spot the correct term? Probably not, but yeah, it's the prostrate. He directed it to the prostrate. I should fix that. With a few more thrusts and strokes, a sudden wave of ecstasy overcame Matthew, and a white stream of cum burst out from his tip. All the tension in Matthew's body released, leaving him a hot, sweaty mess. He carefully pulled out the knife and frowned. I probably shouldn't use this tomorrow. No, not at all. Okay, this one! I really should get off Tumblr. I really should. But anyway, so that's it for that fic. Alright, next up on the list is, oh wow, it's that one. Okay. The next one is another favorite of mine. One that I'm really proud of, actually. Where is it? Here we go. Oh my god, bloody ass rains down! Oh my god, Lewis, no! Okay, so this one in particular I'm really proud of. Like, really, really proud of. Both in concept and kind of like the writing for it. I really enjoyed this one. A familiar face. This one. I'm pretty sure this... My author's notes for this one kind of really say it all for this one. Summary. Mark thought he would never experience anything like his adventures in the Libe ever again. When he was summoned to the world of Zenith over a decade later, he was soon proven wrong. Rated T for steaminess and Mark Sailormouth. Okay, but this one, oh my god, I love this one to death, honestly. I loved writing this. Okay. So, author's notes. This one's kind of important. I want to preface this by saying this fic is kind of what I wanted Thief of My Heart to originally be. A fic where the tactician from Blazing Sword is the same person as the summoner in Heroes. Thief of My Heart was a way for me to test the waters to see if there was a demand for Matthew and Summoner content. The fic's been getting some positive feedback, so here's some more Matthew and Summoner for all of you. And yes, Boo, this is the one you actually wrote that first fic for me for, and thank you for that. Alright, Chapter 1, Welcome to Asker. Ah, man, I just want to say right off the bat, I love writing for Mark. He's a fun character to write for, I think. Anyway. A small alarm clock beeped incessantly as Mark struggled to get an arm out from under the covers. He limply reached out his hand and smacked down the alarm clock's general area. Oh god, shut the hell up already! After a few missed smacks, Mark finally hit the off button. He rolled out of bed and trudged to the bathroom. He began brushing his teeth and went over today's plan in his head. Alright, physics test at 2, gonna meet up with Jordan and Mike for that circuit analysis lab at 4, got the report due next week, midterm coming up the week after. Mark grunted in frustration and spit out the frothy toothpaste. God, I don't want to deal with this shit anymore! If I could just have a small break from school, that would be amazing. As if on cue, a white light enveloped his body. Mark lifted his hand and stared at it wide-eyed. Oh, fuck no! Flashbacks to his childhood came flooding back to him. Flashbacks to a time when something similar happened. Flashbacks to when he led an army in the land of Elibe. No. This wasn't what I meant when I said I wanted a break! Mark frantically looked around the bathroom, hoping to find any means of escaping from this teleportation magic. Come on, I don't want to do this again. I'm not fit for this, The light fully enveloped him, and Mark was no longer in his college dorm's bathroom. Mark scanned the area, trying to figure out where he ended up. Before he could take in his surroundings, he heard a woman speak. Oh, you're here? Then the ritual actually worked. Matthew turned around and saw an armor-clad woman with red hair and a ponytail and a large axe in her hand. He raised a hand. Look, before you continue, ma'am, that's Commander Anna to you, Summoner. The woman smiled and winked. Okay, fine. Matthew waved his hand dismissively. Anna, or whatever. Look, I have some idea of what's going on here, and all I ask is that you return me to my world right now. What are you? Before Anna could finish her question, a dark-clad soldier charged at the pair with a lance in hand. Drat, how did one of those Embleans get here? Anna readied her weapon and stepped in front of Mark. Stand back. I'll take care of this somehow. Fuck. Mark looked on as Anna charged straight toward the soldier. The soldier recoiled his lance and readied his attack. Without thinking, Mark called out, He's attacking! Strafe left and strike! Anna did as Mark said and took the soldier down. She stared at the corpse, then back at Mark. Her eyes were as bright as a child's on Christmas Day. Mark clamped a hand over his mouth. Oh no. Anna ran up to Mark and beamed. Summoner, that was a mistake! Mark put up his hands defensively. Also, why do you keep calling me Summoner? I guess you're right. Anna produced a gun from her pocket and quickly put it in Mark's hand. Let's see if this reacts to you first. Wait, what? Mark examined the weapon in his hand. The golden patterns on the gun began to glow strongly. Brightablick is glowing! Anna cheered. You are the Summoner! Oh, come on! Anna and Mark battled Emblean after Emblean and met up with Alphonse and Sharina, Prince and Princess of the Askren Kingdom, along the way. Mark also begrudgingly learned about summoning heroes with Brightablick and brought Varian from the World of Awakening to fight at their side. With the fighting over for the day, the 5 of them traveled back to Castle Asker. You two are going to love the castle. Sharina grinned at Varian and Mark. Our kitchens are fully stocked with the finest, freshest food stuff. The royal baths have the cleanest water from across the land, and the courtyard is absolutely stunning. You're going to live like kings. He's not the Summoner. He's a very naughty boy. Oh my god. Anna smiled smugly at Mark. Gotta look the part before you can play the part, though. Mark looked down at his ramen broth-stained shirt and boxers. Oh, shut up. Mark stepped out of the Royal Tailor's workshop and presented himself to the Askren trio. Sharina gazed at Mark with stars in her eyes. You look amazing, Summoner! Alphonse nodded. Yes, that cloak suits you. Mark looked down at his new outfit. Reminds me of the cloak I wore back in the Libe. Anna approached Mark. Now that you have some appropriate attire, let's introduce you to the rest of the order. The four of them made their way to the main hall where Virion was already acquainting himself with two heroes, a green-haired boy and a brown-haired young man. Mark squinted his eyes at the young man. Have I seen him before? Wondered Mark. Yes, you have, Mark. Yes, you have! Matthew, Ray! Sharina called out to the two heroes. You have to meet the summoner! Oh, no way. As the two heroes approached, Mark's eyes widened in realization. It is him! Mark quickly pulled up his hood, hoping that Matthew didn't get a chance to get a close look at his face. Matthew? Ray? Sharina gestured to Mark. This is our summoner! Ah... Sharina smiled sheepishly. I do apologize, summoner, but I don't think you gave us your name yet. How rude of us. Mark glanced back and forth between Sharina and Matthew. Come on, Mark, you gotta come up with a fake name. You can't let Matthew know who you really are. Think! Wait, I never told him my last name. Mark, you're a genius. My name's Kieran. He held out a hand. Nice to meet you both. Ray silently took Mark's hand and nodded. Matthew shook Mark's hand and smirked. Can't wait to work with you, Kieran. Mark looked into Matthew's eyes. Wow, he's a lot more handsome than I remember. Mark blinked. Hold up. What? I feel like I could have segued that better, but whatever. It is what it is. Now that introductions are done, Alphonse said, let's give Kieran and Virion a tour of the castle. The next morning, Mark forced his tired eyes open and stared at the wall in front of him. A wall made of huge stone bricks and with his cloak he received yesterday hanging from a hook. Mark mumbled to himself. I guess it wasn't a dream. No, it was not, Matthew declared. Motherfucker! Here's a name. How about none of your dark pieces? Okay, but this part I love just love so much. Motherfucker! Mark rolled out of bed in shock and fell to the floor. He picked himself up and pointed at Matthew, who was nonchalantly laying in his bed. How the fuck did you... He pinched the bridge of his nose. You know what? Never mind. I have a pretty good idea how you got in. Mark sighed and glared. Why is the question I should be asking. Well, Matthew got out of Mark's bed and leaned against the nightstand. To quote Sharina last night after you went to bed, Kieran seems so much more at ease when he's looking at you, Matthew. You should try making him more comfortable here. Oh yeah, Mark said sarcastically, because crawling into bed with me after I've been transported to a mysterious magical world I don't even want to be in is totally gonna make me feel comfortable. Matthew laughed. We're gonna get along fine, Kieran, I can tell. Mark rolled his eyes. Say, Matthew sounded close to Mark. May I get a better look at you? What? Matthew lifted Mark's chin and examined his face. Matthew and Mark locked eyes. I never noticed how brown his eyes were, Mark thought. A light blush rose to Mark's cheeks. He swore at himself. Mark, don't you fucking dare get attached to this guy again. We are not planning on staying here. Mark's eyes darted around the room, unsure of whether or not to keep looking into Matthew's eyes. He could feel his heart pound faster and faster and his muscles tense. He gulped. After a few moments, Matthew let Mark go and turned around. Guess I was mistaken. Mark stepped back. What was that just now? Matthew turned back around to face Mark. It's just that you reminded me of a tactician I worked with long ago. Except the gayness! Oh my god! I swear you look just like him. Matthew smirked. Except much older. He was just a child, but he was a natural strategist. Oh. Mark scratched his chin. What's this kid's name? I might know him. Matthew shook his head. I doubt you would, but his name was Mark. He looked out the window and continued. That kid had a good head on his shoulders, always looking out for the army, making sure we had a smile on our faces even through the toughest times. Matthew sighed. If only he didn't disappear after the war. There was so much I wanted to say to him. Sometimes I wonder what he's up to now. Did he look at me just now? Mark shook his head. Nah, he's just convinced I'm just Kieran. That's all I'll ever be to everyone here, but still... I'm sure Mark's doing just fine. Mark smiled at Matthew. Like you said, he's got a good head on his shoulders. Matthew nodded and walked to the door. Let's go, Kieran. We've got work to do. Mark groaned. Yeah, right behind you. Alright, Chapter 2, First Meeting. There wasn't really much to say about that first chapter, honestly. I just really enjoyed it. Excuse me, sorry. Okay, anyway, Chapter 2, First Meeting. Excuse me, oh boy. A cool breeze and a songbird's call flowed into Mark's bedroom window as another morning asker came. Fuck me. Are you sure you don't need me to escort you anymore? Matthew asked Mark as he laid in Mark's bed. I'll be fine, all right? Mark grabbed his cloak off the hook and put his arms through the sleeves. I've been here a few days already. I practically know the place like the back of my hand now. Yeah, Hector's got that good stuff right there. Let's see. Also, Mark furrowed his brow at Matthew and jerked his thumb backward. Get the fuck out of my bed! Matthew sat up and rose from the bed while Mark gathered his belongings from the desk. Matthew shrugged. I'm just following orders directly issued by Askren royalty. He winked and flashed a cocky grin. You can't expect a loyal spy like me to go against orders like that. Yeah. Mark grumbled as he walked to the mirror by the door and fixed his hair. But that guy got to sleep in my bed every night. Matthew approached Mark from behind. Do you not enjoy it? Mark's eyebrows raised as his cheeks flushed. I mean, I'm not against it. I just... Then I'll keep doing it. Matthew ruffled Mark's hair. Hey! Fuck. God damn it. There we go. I'll be going then. Matthew opened the door. Let me or anyone else in the order know if you need anything. Mark nodded. Matthew stepped out and shut the door behind him. Mark stared at his reflection in the mirror and pouted. What did I ever see in that guy? Flashback! I think I saw someone go into that house there, Lynn. Mark pointed to one of the houses on the path beside them. Should we check it out? Lynn looked in the direction Mark was pointing. If you think it will help us get into the secret passage, then let's investigate. Mark nodded. Okay, Kent, Will, Eric, and Sarah, you go that way and fight the swordsmen up ahead. Dorcas, Zane, Wrath, and Florina, stay here just in case. Everyone did as they were told, and Mark and Lynn headed north to investigate the house. Lynn cautiously approached the door with a hand on the hilt of her blade, and Mark staying close behind her. When they opened the door, they saw a young brown-haired man wearing a red cape sitting by one of the windows. The man noticed the door open and addressed Lynn and Mark. Hey, you! Can I talk to you? Lynn kept a steady hand on her sword's hilt and asked, Who are you? I'm Matthew, the man introduced himself. A specialist in acquisitions of all kinds. Would you like to buy my services? What does he mean by that? Mark whispered to Lynn. Lynn smiled at Mark, then stared sternly at Matthew. We've no need for a thief. Oh! Mark nodded in his head repeatedly, understanding the situation. He stopped, suddenly having a realization. Stealing is bad, Mr. Matthew! Oh my god, he calls him Mr. Matthew. That's so cute. Oh my god. Oh my god, Sam, please. Matthew crouched down in front of Mark and ruffled his hair. Stealing isn't bad if it's my job, is it, kiddo? Mark crossed his arms and furrowed his brow deep in thought. Lynn put her hands on her hips and glared at Matthew. Don't confuse him. Anyway. Matthew stood back up. How do you two plan on opening the barrack doors? Mark and Lynn looked at each other, then at Matthew in shock. Lynn spoke up. How did you know about... Matthew flashed a cocky grin. Bullseye. Lynn pursed her lips. Mark tugged Lynn's clothes. She leaned down and Mark whispered into her ear. I think he should join us. Lynn frowned. Mark, he's nothing but a common thief. We can't have someone like him with us. Give me the knife and potion first. Oh my god, Lewis, please. But he looks pretty smart, reasoned Mark, and I think he has a plan to get the door unlocked anyway. Matthew leaned down over to Lynn and whispered, The kid has a good point. Oh, be quiet. Lynn pushed Matthew away. Mark snickered at the sight. Matthew smiled at Mark and stood back up. He turned to Lynn. Don't be mad. Hire me. He smirked. For you, I'll even lower my normal rate. Lynn gave Matthew a skeptical look, then looked to Mark, who was giving her puppy dog eyes. Mark mouthed the word, please. Lynn groaned. We do need those doors opened. Mark and Matthew stared at her expectantly. She gave the pair one last look and sighed. Okay, you're hired. Mark jumped for joy. Yes! Matthew chuckled and crunched down to Mark. So, kiddo, you're obviously the brains of this operation. What's your name? My name's Mark, Mark declared proudly. Well, Mark. Matthew held out a hand. I can't wait to work with you. Mark, with a wide grin on his face, took Matthew's hand and gave him a firm shake. Matthew's still the same fucking asshole I knew back then. That same asshole that my 8-year-old self thought was so fucking cool. Mark sighed and smiled slightly to himself. I guess some things never change. Mark caught himself and shook his head. Come on, Mark, focus. You've got more important things to attend to. He finished redoing his hair and walked out the door. Time to hit the library. I need to find a way out of here. That flashback's so cute, I swear to Christ! Could just burn the doors down or smash them with the battering ram or something. Oh my god. Alright, Chapter 3, Knowing Too Much. This chapter. It was okay. Mark meandered through the castle halls, searching high and low for a path to the library. He stopped at one intersection and examined the paths before him. Okay, I just gotta turn left. Or was it right? Wait, is it even on this floor? Mark stood in the middle of the intersection and bowed his head deep in thought, trying to remember which way Matthew led him last time. After what seemed like hours passed, Mark threw his head back and screamed to the ceiling, "Why the fuck is this castle so complicated?" Sounds like someone needs help. A voice spoke up from behind Mark. Holy shit! Mark whipped around and saw the source of the voice was none other than Matthew. God damn it, Matthew, don't do that! Matthew chuckled. Sorry about that, Kieran. He approached Mark. Anyway, like I said, sounds like you need help. I'm good. Mark crossed his arms. I just want to find an alternate way to the library, that's all. Matthew pointed behind himself with his thumb. Even though the library is on the other side of the castle? Mark narrowed his eyes. Yes. Matthew smirked as he offered a hand to Mark. Come on. Mark looked at the hand, then scowled at Matthew. Just lead the way, I'm not holding your hand like a damn kid. Matthew's face twisted for a split second, then returned to his signature sly smile. Right. He retracted his hand, turned around, and started walking with Mark following a few paces behind him. Holy shit. So, what business do you have at the library? Asked Matthew. Definitely none of your business, Mark replied. Matthew snickered at Mark's play on words. Are you always this cold to your friends, Kieran? Mark hesitated. We aren't friends. We do sleep in the same bed every night. Matthew looked back and winked. That has to count for something. Only because you invite yourself in, grumbled Mark. You did say you like it, retorted Matthew. Hey, don't twist my words like that. Mark briefly picked up his pace so that he was walking alongside Matthew. He pointed at him. I only said I didn't mind, not that I actually enjoyed sleeping with you. Matthew raised his head and smirked. You'd better watch your phrasing, Kieran. He reached around and placed a hand on Mark's shoulder. You might give me ideas. Mark thought back to what he said and cocked his accidental innuendo. Gah! Mark shrugged Matthew's hand off his shoulder. I didn't... You know that's not what I meant! Matthew laughed. I didn't think you were the type to get easily flustered by that sort of thing, Kieran. I'll have to keep that in mind. Mark pulled up his hood with a huff and averted his gaze. Fucking asshole. The duo walked the rest of the way in silence until they reached the library. I'd better stay with you, said Matthew. You wouldn't want to get lost again, right? Mark pouted. Yeah, just don't get in my way. Mark perused the bookshelves, looking for texts about other worlds, opening portals, and the like. Matthew followed close behind, noting Mark's selections. Mark sat back down at one of the tables and spread out the various books, parchments, and scrolls he picked up from the shelves. Matthew stretched himself out on one of the sofas behind Mark, reading a novel he picked for himself. Mark read to himself. Let's see, Asker can open portals, Embla can close them, World of Mystery, Arcania, World of Awakening, Easily fucking goddamn it. World of Blazing, Alibe. Mark stopped and traced the finger underneath the heading. He proceeded to read through the history of the World of Blazing. The Black Fang, the poisoning of Marcus Kaelin, the battle against the Fire Dragon. Mark remembered them all. His heart felt heavy. Images of his former comrades filled his mind. Lynn, Hector, Ellawood, so many people he didn't have a chance to say goodbye to. Once the dragon was defeated, Mark had immediately been transported back home to his bedroom, back to the day before he was transported to Alibe as if nothing had ever happened. But Mark knew there would be no way of going back there. No way to tell any of his friends how much he enjoyed his time with them, how much they meant to him, how much he wanted to stay right there with them by their side for the rest of his life. A teardrop fell onto the book's page. Kiddo? Mark whipped his head around and saw Matthew standing beside him with a look of concern on his face. Matthew slammed the book shut. What the hell do you want? Find what you needed? Asked Matthew. No. Mark wiped his eyes and gathered all the materials he borrowed. And don't call me kiddo. I'm only like, what, a couple years younger than you? Matthew forced a laugh. Right. Mark stood up from his seat and returned the text to the original places as Matthew looked on in silence. Once he was done, Mark pulled up his hood and approached Matthew. Take me back to my room and take care of the patrols for today. I don't feel well. Matthew nodded and led Mark back to his room. Mark slumped into bed, laying on his stomach. What the hell is wrong with me? Mark grabbed his pillow, covered his head, and stomped quietly into the mattress. Come on, Mark, pull yourself together. Do you want to go back home or not? Mark took deep breaths, trying to regain composure. Okay, we still have no damn clue how to get back. Fine. Oh, Sam. He peeked out and laid his eyes on Breideblick, which was sitting on the nightstand. maybe it wouldn't hurt to bring some friends here for now. Alright, Chapter 4. A Summoner's Luck. Oh, man. Okay, so I didn't really plan on adding Lynn, Hector, or Ellawood into this fic until a friend kind of mentioned them to me. They were like, "Oh, I hope Mark meets up with Lynn, Ellawood, and Hector." And I'm like, I didn't plan for that, but I'm like, you know what? It would probably be good if he did. So I kind of wrote them in. So that's a thing. Anyway, just give me someone from the world of blazing, please! Mark yelled at Breideblick. The heroes that Mark summoned earlier that day stared at him with concern and confusion on their faces. One of them, Lissa, a blonde cleric from the world of awakening, tugged on Anna's sleeve. "Is he going to be okay?" she whispered. "Probably," Anna shrugged. "He is a bit of a hothead, sure, but that usually doesn't blow out of proportion." Mark shot Breideblick again. Riss from the world of mystery emerged. "Fuck! You could also say he was probably a sailor in a past life," Anna winked. I see," said Lissa. Matthew called out from behind Mark. "Why would you want someone from the world of blazing specifically?" "Because..." Mark thought for a moment for a good cover-up. "I read so much about it, I want to talk to someone who was actually there." "Yeah, that's it!" Alphonse cautiously approached Mark and put a hand on his shoulder. "Kieran, you will run out of orbs at this point. Perhaps you should take it easy." Mark looked at Alphonse dead in the eye. "I'll take it easy when I'm dead." Mark reloaded Breideblick with orbs and a red summon stone as Mark retracted his hand and paced back a few steps. I just like the image of that, honestly. I really do. Mark took a deep breath. "This better be the one." He fired. From Breideblick's muzzle emerged a young blue-clad woman with long green hair tied in a ponytail. Mark looked on in awe. The woman's name barely escaped from his lips. Lynn. Huh? Where? Lynn looked all around her. All around here? Her. I should say her. Trying to piece together where she was. She turned around and laid her eyes on Mark. Her eyes immediately lit up. "Mark!" Lynn ran up to him. Mark's eyes transfixed on Lynn's slender legs. "Oh, wow! Leg! Yep, those sure are legs!" Lynn held him in a tight hug. "I thought I would never see you again!" Mark's entire face flushed with Lynn's sudden contact. Boob, fuck, boob against chest, oh shit, please, don't notice the boner, oh god, someone help! Oh my god. Lady Lindis, please. Lady Lindis, I believe you should let the poor boy go. Matthew approached the pair with a slight grin on his face. He seems to be a bit overstimulated. Huh? Lynn turned to look at Mark's beet red face. Oh! Lynn let Mark go and stepped back. "I'm so sorry, Mark. It's been so long, and I'm so happy to see you. I can't believe you're all grown up now." She turned to Matthew. "And Matthew, it's surprising to see you here, too." She and Matthew started to converse, and Mark started to panic. "Crap, I can't believe she recognized me. I can't let her know I'm Mark. At least not while Matthew's around. Fuck." He frowned. "Sorry, Lynn. Gotta keep you in the dark for a bit." Oh my god, Sam. Mark interrupted Lynn. "I'm sorry, Lindis, was it? I don't believe we've met before." Lynn looked at Mark, confused. "What are you talking about?" "My name's Kieran," Mark introduced himself. "Sorry, but I don't know about this Mark person." Oh. Lynn looked down, disheartened. "I'm sorry, it's just that you look just like an old friend of mine. Except older." "Don't worry, Lady Lindis," Matthew laughed. "I mistook him for Mark when we first met as well." Matthew smirked at Mark. The two really look alike, don't they? Anyway, Mark put Breideblick away. "Anna, Sharina, Alphonse, Matthew, can you guys show the new heroes around the castle?" "On it," Sharina said. "Let's go, everyone." As Matthew and Lynn were leaving with the others, Mark tapped Matthew on the shoulder. "Hey, Matthew, do me a favor?" "What is it?" I actually haven't written any Danganronpa fanfics. I've only really written Fire Emblem ones. Everything is Fire Emblem, which is why I'm doing this today. What is it?" asked Matthew. "Bring Lynn to my room after the tour of the castle. I want to ask her about Mark." Matthew gave Mark a knowing look. "Sure thing, Kieran." Alright, Chapter 5, Wind Across the Plains. Okay, so each chapter after this kind of gonna focus on either Lynn, Hector, or Ellawood, and each one will have a flashback, just letting you all know now. That's kind of how each of these chapters are gonna structure themselves. Anyway, oh boy, here we go. Mark was laying in bed when he heard a knock on his bedroom door. "Come in," he called out. The door opened. Matthew and Lynn were on the other side. And here we are. Matthew extended his arm and led Lynn inside. "Thank you, Matthew." Lynn waved goodbye to Matthew as he closed the door. Mark got up and patted a spot next to him on the bed. "Here, have a seat, Lady Lindis." Lynn sat next to Mark. "Thank you, Kieran," she smiled. "And please, call me Lynn." Mark gave her a small smile. "Sure thing, Lynn." "So you wish to speak with me?" asked Lynn. Yes." Mark scratched his chin. "To be honest, I actually wanted to tell you a story. Want to hear it? It won't be a waste of time, I promise." "I would love to," said Lynn. "All right." Mark cleared his throat. "Once upon a time, there was a young boy from another world. He loved going to school, playing with his friends, and spending time with his family very much. One day, everything he loved was taken away from him. He was then taken to a world unlike his own. The boy was scared, lost, and alone. He wandered the open plains of this new world, unsure where to go. He longed to go back home. He wanted to see his parents again. He wanted to see his friends again. After days of wandering the plains, the boy collapsed from hunger. Before losing consciousness, the boy had only one thought in his mind. Am I going to die? When the boy woke up, death wasn't there to greet him. In fact, it was a kind and beautiful young woman. The two grew close and traveled across the land together. They made many friends on their travels. The boy loved them all very much and didn't want to leave their side, but he had to. The boy disappeared without a trace. Back to his world where the times he spent with his newfound friends were nothing but a memory. The boy grew up and had given up hope of meeting his friends from another world again. In fact, all the boy desired was to live a normal life. But once again, all that was taken away. He was taken to another world against his will, just like before. However, things were different. If he wished, he could see his friends from so long ago. He would apologize to them for not being able to say goodbye back then, for disappearing without saying a word. But he was afraid of what they'd say. Where'd you go? What happened to you? Why did you leave us? He didn't want to face those questions, but then he met that young woman again, and she recognized the boy right away. He had no choice but to say this to her. Oh my god, Sam, to be honest, accurate. Lynn. Mark looked into Lynn's eyes. If I worried you back then, if I worried you at all now, I'm sorry for all that. If you hate me or if you don't want to see me again, I'd understand. I would never hate you, Mark. Lynn brought Mark into a tight embrace. Oh, Mark, I knew it was you. I just knew it. Mark hugged Lynn back. Yeah, sorry I had to hide that from you. It doesn't matter now. Lynn wiped her teary eyes. You're right here. I have so many questions. Here we go. Mark rolled his eyes and smirked. Everything was true then. Mark nodded. Yeah, I had no choice when it came to leaving Libe. Whatever magic brought me there was in the first place must have brought me back to my world. Lynn cocked her head at Mark. And what about the magic that brought you, Matthew, and I here? Was it the same magic from back then? Mark furrowed his brow and shook his head. No, I don't think so. Asker and summoning magic seems to be something entirely different. Mark took Brideblick out of its holster and showed it to Lynn. But I can use that power myself now, I think, because of Brideblick. Lynn's eyes widened. It should say Lynn's. God. Mark, that's amazing! Let's bring the others here too. I'm sure they would love to see you. Mark grimaced and looked out the window. Lynn, as much as I want to see everyone, my priority is to go back to my world. Not only do I want to go back to my life there, I'd want to give myself the hope I'll see everyone from Libe again. My luck with trying to summon someone from there isn't exactly the best. Mark rubbed the back of his neck. Seriously, did you see how many heroes I summoned before you came along? I had to fire Brideblick 20 times or something before I finally brought you here. Ammo isn't easy to come by either. Not to mention if someone from Libe were to come here, I'd have to explain myself, and that would be a hassle, and... Mark... Lynn put a hand on Mark's shoulder. I think you should enjoy your time with everyone here instead of worrying about going back home. What? Concerned, Mark looked at Lynn. Lynn continued. I was talking to Matthew before we came to your room. He said you were doing research on other worlds the other day and didn't learn a lot from that. Since you don't have any leads on how to get back home, wouldn't it be better to focus on what you can do here now? Besides, Lynn smiled warmly. I'm sure Matthew would love to catch up with an old friend that was right under his nose. Come on, Lynn. Mark blushed. Lynn giggled. You two were so close back then. Even when you first met, you and Matthew were inseparable. You always consulted him when you needed help strategizing. Whenever we traveled, you held either my hand or Matthew's. And I'm sure you held Matthew's hand more often than mine. There were some nights when you two slept in the same tent. You even went so far as to call him your big brother. Okay. I get it. Mark pulled up his hood over his face. I'll tell Matthew who I really am. Eventually. Just don't bring up more embarrassing memories like that. All right, Lynn smiled. It would be nice to see you enjoying each other's company again. Especially since... you know... Huh? Mark cocked an eyebrow. What do you mean by that? Do you not remember... Lynn paused. Never mind. Perhaps it's best not to bring it up. Lynn rose from the bed. Anyway, is that all you needed, Mark? Yeah. Mark nodded. Thanks for your time, Lynn. Oh, and make sure you call me Kieran in public, alright? Of course, said Lynn. I'll see you later then. Yep. Mark waved to her. See ya. When Lynn left the room, Mark lowered his head deep in thought. What was Lynn talking about? What happened between me and Matthew? Dun, 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 dun! Okay. But we actually get to see what happened between him and Matthew in the next chapter, chapter 6 of Ostia. You can probably guess who appears in this chapter. Lynn, you have certain assets that Matthew will never have. Oh my god. Okay, but anyway, chapter 6, here we go. A few days later, Anna and Mark supervised the new heroes as they practiced on the training grounds. Everyone's making good progress, Anna nodded to herself. Mark grunted in agreement as he drank from his water canteen. While he should have been focusing on the army as a whole, Mark's attention stayed on Matthew. Why can't I remember what happened back then? Anna crossed her arms. I think we should summon more heroes here. We're lacking in strong axe wielders. Mark continued looking out to the target range where the archers and dagger users were practicing their aim. Matthew, Gaius, and Felicia were joking around and giving each other critique on their technique. If something bad happened between me and Matthew... Let's go to the summoning room once we're done here. Anna glanced at Mark. Mark's gaze was fixed on Matthew. He observed every little change in his expression. The way his lips curled when he laughed, the way his eyes narrowed slightly when preparing his aim, the way his eyes shone when he or his companions got a bullseye. Then, why am I feeling this way? So when are you and Matthew gonna bang? Anna asked nonchalantly. Mark spit took. Okay, the only reason I had Mark drinking something in the first place was just so he can spit take at Anna's comment right here. That's the only reason why I had him drinking something at that point. Honestly. Anyway, after gagging on the water he was drinking, Mark cried out, Anna, what the hell? Anna giggled. Just checking if you've been listening. But anyway, she shrugged. It's a simple question. I'd love to hear the answer. Mark pouted and pulled up his hood. None of your business. Anna leaned over in front of Mark. Oh, so it's gonna happen eventually. Shut up! Barked Mark. At any rate, Anna walked toward the castle. Meet me in the summoning room in a few minutes. We need to summon more heroes. Yeah. Mark looked to Anna, then back at Matthew. He held onto the hem of his hood. Fucking hell. Many summoned Arthurs and Barsts later, Mark loaded Bridelick with the last of his orbs and a green summon stone. Cross your fingers, Anna. Mark aimed straight ahead. We're gonna need all the luck we can get. Anna gave Mark a thumbs up. Go for it! Mark took a deep breath and fired. From Bridelick's muzzle emerged a young, blue-haired man clad completely in armor carrying an axe. The man looked around frantically. What the? Where? He turned around and laid eyes on Mark. You! The man stopped towards Mark and grabbed Mark by the collar. Who are you? What is this place? And he looked into Mark's eyes and squinted. Why do you look familiar? Are you for real? Mark grumbled under his breath. Anna approached the pair and pointed at the young man. I think a better question is, who are you? The man let Mark go and introduced himself. I'm Hector, from a realm called Ostia. Wow. Anna nudged Mark in the arm with her elbow. Another hero from the world of Blazing who recognizes you. She winked. I'm sensing a pattern here. Hector cocked an eyebrow. World of what now? Shut it, Anna. Mark playfully shoved Anna. Could I talk with Lord Hector alone? Anna nodded. Of course. She turned around and walked out the room. Mark approached Hector. Lord Hector, let's just cut to the chase here. You remember that half-pint of a tactician you worked with way back when? Mark pointed to himself. Yeah, that kid's me. I'm Mark! Hector swiftly lifted Mark off the ground and shook him. Where in blazes have you been? Lynn and Elowood and I have been worried sick about you. And why are you so grown up now? There's no way you could have grown up this much in just a few years. Lord Hector! Mark's voice wavered as Hector shook him. Can you put me down? Hector gently set Mark back down on his feet. Sorry. Clearing his throat, Hector continued. What happened to you? I'm Hector the Rector and Vector the Hector counter technique. Oh my god. What happened to you? After we killed the fire dragon, it's like you vanished into thin air. That's more or less accurate, Mark grimaced. Here, let me fill you in. Mark explained to Hector everything from his arrival in Liube to the present day, just as he did with Lynn several days earlier. I see. Hector bowed his head in deep thought. Just don't let Matthew know about anything I just told you, added Mark. I have my reasons. That's understandable. Hector rubbed the back of his neck. Ever since you and Matthew had that fight, nothing was the same between you two. Mark gave Hector a worried look. Fight? What fight, Lord Hector? Hector's eyes widened. You don't remember? It was sometime after we found Layla's body on the Dread Isle. You and Matthew couldn't stop yelling at each other. Mark lowered his head and held his chin. No, I don't... Mark closed his eyes, trying to trace his memories back to that moment. The Dread Isle, Layla's death, Matthew and I... Wait! You're being stupid! Mark cried out, his voice hoarse from raising his voice for minutes straight. You're the one who's being a dumb brat, Matthew yelled back. Mark curled his hands into his fist. Being sad all the time isn't gonna do anything! Mark stomped forward and bared his teeth. You don't have a damn clue what I'm going through! Warm tears started to flow down Mark's face. She wouldn't want you to be like this. Shut up! Matthew grabbed Mark by the collar. You don't know a damn thing about her! That's enough! Hector, Lynn, and Elwood separated the two. Hector held on to Matthew's arms, Lynn crouched down and held Mark by the shoulders, and Elwood stood between them with his arms outstretched. A heavy silence weighed down on the group. Everyone exchanged glances with each other. Matthew breathed heavily, trying to catch his breath. Mark sniffled tightly and pursed his lips, trying his best not to cry any more than he already has. After what seemed like hours, Hector pulled Matthew aside while Lynn walked herself and Mark to her tent. Oh my god, I cannot read! As soon as the two were alone, Mark threw herself into Lynn's arms and sobbed. Lynn held Mark tightly and stroked his hair. Shh, it's going to be okay, Mark. It's going to be okay. Big bro, Mark choked up between sobs, hates me now. No. Lynn held Mark closer. I'm sure Matthew didn't mean what he said. She let Mark go and wiped his tears. You didn't mean what you said, right? Mark thought for a moment and sniffled. No. See? Lynn smiled slightly. We all make mistakes, Mark, and you forgive yourself and Matthew if you make mistakes, right? Mark nodded. Good. It's getting close to dinner time. Want to help Will, Florina, and I get food? Mark shook his head. Okay. I'll come back and let you know when dinner's ready. Mark nodded and Lynn left the tent. When Mark was gone, when Mark was alone, he curled up and continued to cry. That's right, thought Mark. After all that, all Matthew wanted was to avenge Layla, and I was too scared to be around him anymore. Mark stayed silent as the memory came flooding back to him, and he managed to get his words out. And he managed to get the words out of his throat. I remember now. Hector looked at Mark with concern. Mark shook his head. Lord Hector, I know what you're probably thinking, but I'm okay now. Really? Are you sure? Asked Hector. Mark nodded. After I returned to my world, I did a lot of thinking and just accepted that Matthew and I weren't thinking straight back then. Honestly, after all these years, I just forgot about it. But now there's a problem. Hector crossed his arms, and that is... Mark lowered his head. How am I supposed to approach Matthew about my true identity now? Alright. End of chapter 6. Oh my goodness. That one. That one was, yeah. But anyway, chapter 7. Faithful Knight Elwood. The chapter in which Elwood sets Mark straight in trying to figure out what the heck to do, pretty much. Here we go. Over the next few days, Mark avoided Matthew as he tried to sort out his thoughts. Should I tell Matthew I'm Mark? Is he still upset about it back then? Will he be upset with me now since I didn't tell him sooner? These thoughts clouded Mark's mind, and today was no different. Mark stood in the middle of the summoning room with a orb-loaded Brightablick in his hand. Let's see... Anna wanted dark mages and fire mages this time around. Mark took a red summon stone from the pedestal beside him and loaded Brightablick. Well, here we go. Mark fired Brightablick and a young red-haired man on a white horse emerged from it. The man looked around the room. Well now, this is strange. Where... Mark shrugged. Just my luck. Mark smiled and approached the young man. Lord Elwood. Elwood turned around. Have we met before? Lying has a way of biting you in the leg sooner or later, Mark. Yes, it does. Have we met before? I don't believe I... He looked Mark up and down. Wait, Mark? Is that you? Elwood dismounted his horse and examined Mark's figure further. After a few moments, Elwood beamed. Mark! He put his hands on Mark's shoulders. Look at you! You've grown into a fine young man, I can tell! Mark looked to the ground and smiled bashfully. Lord Elwood, please. Mark looked back to Elwood. I have a feeling you're wondering what happened to me back in Libe. I'm sure you have time to hear me out? Elwood smiled. Only if you explain to me where exactly I am as well. Mark chuckled. Deal. Mark escorted Elwood around at Castle Asker and explained to him what he had explained to Lynn and Hector. After showing him around, Mark and Elwood settled down at the bench in the courtyard where they continued their discussion of Mark's circumstances. What a fascinating world you brought Hector, Lynn, and I into, Mark, said Elwood. What is even more fascinating is how you're the reason all of us are here right now. It's as if you were drawn to take up a tactician role despite what you were actually doing in your own world. Exasperated, Mark sighed. You can say that again. I do have one question for you. Elwood looked off into the distance. Mark leaned back in the bench. Shoot. Elwood asked in a low voice. Do you still wish to go home? Mark looked to the sky and collected his thoughts. When he found the right words to say, he replied, If you asked me a couple weeks ago, I'd say fuck yes, no hesitation. Elwood chuckled at the remark. But now, I guess I've grown used to commanding an army again. It's weird, but I feel nostalgic? Elwood leaned back in his seat. I don't think that's strange at all. We made good memories back then. Yeah, Mark said wistfully. His mind went back to Matthew. He frowned. Do you think Matthew feels the same way? Elwood gave Mark a sympathetic look. Does your falling out still bother you? Well, I'm not concerned about it. Mark scratched his chin. But I'm worried that it might still bother Matthew. Elwood nodded. Yes, I understand. But would it not be better to confront him about it? Mark looked down into his feet and scoffed. What am I supposed to even say to him, Elwood? Sorry for fighting about your dead girlfriend when I was 8. I've forgotten about it already? Anything I say to him is just going to make him hate me more than he already does. I know it. He sighed. Lord Elwood, Because I wrote this stuff. I'm not going to nope at my own stuff. At least I don't think I will, unless it's really cringy for some reason. Lord Elwood, Mark buried his face in his hands. I just don't want to lose him again. In all honesty, Mark, Elwood put a hand on Mark's shoulder. You and Matthew had a strong friendship. I can tell that both of you wanted to stay that way despite the circumstances. Elwood patted Mark's back. Have faith in your friendship, Mark. You didn't call Matthew your big brother for nothing. Fuck off, Elwood! Blood rushed to Mark's face as memories of himself calling Matthew Big Bro came flooding back to him in a wave of embarrassment. Big Bro! Mark pointed at the map of the battlefield. What do you think about splitting the army down these two paths? Matthew bent over to examine the map and nodded to himself. Sound strategy, kiddo. Just make sure you've got our stronger units up front on each side. Also, Matthew ruffled Mark's hair. New nickname for me? No more Mr. Matthew? Mark craned his neck up to make eye contact with Matthew. I've always wanted a big brother, and I want you to be it. Oh my god, this is so cute. You know what, Sam? You can shut up. Oh, really? Matthew smirked. And why is that? Well, Mark showed Matthew a wide grin. You're super cool and super smart like a big brother should be. And you're strong and you teach me a lot of strategy and you protect me from the bad guys and... Matthew laughed and pulled Mark into a hug. All right, kiddo, you've got me. I'll be your big brother from now on. Mark hugged Matthew back. Yeah, thanks, big bro. You're the best big bro in the whole world. Oh my god, this is so cute. So cute. Mark curled up in his seat. Did I have no shame? God, why the fuck was I so cringy? Misinterpreting Mark's sudden outburst as an act of anger, Elwood retracted his hand. Sorry, Mark, was that too much? Mark took a moment to regain his composure and sat up. Never speak of that again. Fair enough, Elwood mumbled. But you know... Mark looked up to the sky once more. I wouldn't mind being Matthew's little brother again. He looked to Elwood. Thanks, Lord Elwood. I think I know what I need to do now. Bewildered, Elwood stared at Mark, then nodded. Good luck, Mark. Remember, have faith. Oh, wait, I've completely forgot to fix up something here. The alert box. The current fic we are reading right now, we're currently reading a familiar face. I forgot to do that when I finished up Thief of My Heart. Here we go. There we go. Alright, anyway. Let's see. Bewildered, Elwood stood and Mark then nodded. Good luck, Mark. Remember, have faith. Mark nodded it back to Elwood and marched back inside the castle with his head held high. Alright. Chapter 8. I missed you. And here's where things get a bit steamy. No outright, like, penetration going on, but it does get a bit steamy. Just putting that out there right now. Alright, here we go. Although Mark avoided Matthew over the past few days, he does not, unfortunately. He doesn't really get involved with Lynn. I thought, honestly, I did consider that, but I was like, nah. No love triangles or anything in this one. Although Mark avoided Matthew over the past few days, Matthew still snuck into Mark's room at night to sleep in the same bed. Mark couldn't have just outright banned Matthew from the bedroom. That would have made him suspicious. So, when Mark returned to his room after a long day with Elwood and managing training regimens, he was surprised to see Matthew already curled up in his bed. It was more so the fact that Matthew was already asleep rather than him being there at all that surprised him. Holy shit. Mark cocked his head at the sight, then shrugged. Must have overworked himself or something, he thought. Mark changed out of his summer uniform, changed into a shirt and shorts, and crawled into bed with Matthew. He laid on his side, staring at Matthew face to face. Mark frowned. I'll have to tell him tomorrow. As soon as he closed his eyes to sleep, Mark heard something. Mark's eyes shot open, and saw Matthew was still asleep. Matthew? Mark, sorry. Matthew mumbled. Sleep-talking? Wondered Mark. Was he always a sleep-talker? Come back. Matthew's face twisted. Mark, it must be a bad dream. Unsure of what to do, Mark stared at Matthew. He extended his arm, hovered it over Matthew's body, and hesitated. Sorry. Mark wrapped his arm around Matthew and held him close. It's okay, Matthew, Mark whispered. Mark rubbed Matthew's back. Shh, it's okay. I'm right here. Matthew's muscles relaxed. Relieved that Matthew started to calm down, Mark sighed. Is he dreaming about back then? Mark closed his eyes, trying to find the right words to say. He took a deep breath. Matthew. Mark cupped Matthew's face. I forgive you. It's okay. Matthew's breathing evened out, and his expression relaxed further. Mark stared at Matthew's sleeping face, his calm stillness, his slightly parted lips. Mark brought his face closer to Matthew's. Mark's heart beat faster as he wondered if he should make his next move. Oh boy. As if to persuade Mark, Matthew limply wrapped an arm around Mark's body. Please, stay. Mark's cheeks flushed. Matthew. He stroked Matthew's cheek with his thumb. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere, I promise. He closed his eyes and kissed Matthew. Mark felt something warm cup his cheek, and Matthew's lips pressed firmer against his. He opened his eyes. Mark saw that Matthew's eyes were open as well. Matthew broke the kiss and smiled. Thank you, Mark. Mark's eyes widened. What the hell? You were awake the entire time? Matthew smirked. Yeah, and from what you just said, you revealed two things, Kieran. Matthew counted off with his fingers as he spoke. 1, you're actually Mark. Frankly, that was obvious from the start. And 2, Matthew rolled himself and Mark over. He straddled himself just below Mark's hips and pinned Mark down to the mattress by the shoulders. You've fallen for me. Which, again, was obvious. Matthew brushed a lock of Mark's hair behind his ear and leaned in closer to his face. Am I wrong? Shocked by the sudden development, Mark stared up at Matthew with wise-eyed and mouth agape. Matthew whispered into Mark's ear. I'm waiting. Heat rose to Mark's cheeks. His pounding heart kept him from saying a word. He gulped. Matthew shrugged and started to get off Mark. Well, if you won't answer, I'll just... Hold on! Mark grabbed onto Matthew's shirt. Fine, you got me, all right? Mark glanced at Matthew. How'd you know? Matthew smiled and resumed his position. For the moment you looked at me and pulled up your hood to hide your face, Matthew leaned out and nuzzled against Mark's neck. I had a feeling it was you. So, when you wanted to get a closer look... Mark began to ask. My suspicions were confirmed. Matthew lightly nipped and sucked on Mark's neck, to which Mark quietly yelped in response. I waited for you to reveal yourself to me, but you didn't. He whispered in Mark's ear. Who's on the phone? Not important. I waited for you to reveal yourself to me, but you didn't. He whispered in Mark's ear. Why did you hide it from me? Why did you hide your identity from me this whole time? You revealed yourself to Lady Lindis and Lord Hector, but not me. Wait. Mark's mind grew hazy as Matthew teased him. How did you know they knew? Matthew nibbled Mark's ear. Mark could feel Matthew's chest pound against his own beating heart. I
I told them I knew your identity the entire time, so they told me about what you said to them. Matthew held Mark's hips, so the question remains, why hide your true identity? Matthew slowly grinded his forming erection against Mark's, his breath becoming more uneven. Was it because back then, Mark? Were you afraid of me? Mark grabbed onto the bedsheets and moaned. I didn't remember a fight until recently. Matthew quickened his pace. Mark squirmed under Matthew as his entire body heated up. I didn't want to... Fuck. I didn't want to get close to you again. I wanted to go back home so badly. Shit. I didn't want to feel bad about leaving you again. Matthew ran his fingers through Mark's hair. Is that the truth? You weren't afraid of me anymore. Mark shook his head. No, honestly. Mark held out and let out another moan. Honestly, I thought you'd be the one still upset. He pecked Mark's cheek. No, I'm not upset. All I wanted was your forgiveness, Mark. Since you decided to keep your identity secret, I thought you hated me. Matthew let out a sigh of relief. All this time I was afraid you were still intimidated by me. Mark smiled warmly at Matthew. It's all in the past now. Right now I want to be with you. I missed you. Mark averted his gaze and mumbled. Big bro. Matthew's grinding came to a grinding halt. I kind of like that line. I like that line. He covered his mouth with his hand, stifling a laugh. Cute. Hey, fuck off! Mark glared at Matthew with a face flushed from arousal and embarrassment. No one asked you! Matthew chuckled and kissed Mark's forehead. I missed you too, kiddo. Mark snarled. I told you not to call me kiddo. He wrapped an arm around Matthew's torso, held onto his scalp, and pulled him into a hungry kiss. Their tongues slid and glided against one another as their groans, warm breaths, and moan names filled the room. They held each other close as their hands traced out the curvature of each other's bodies. Matthew pulled away from the kiss, leaving a trail of saliva behind. He gasped. Mark, please promise me. He planted a kiss on Mark's cheek. Promise you'll stay here. Mark cupped Matthew's face in his hands. Weren't you listening earlier? He brought Matthew's face closer and kissed him. I already did. The duo continued grinding, kissing, groping each other all over until they'd exhausted themselves. Matthew and Mark drifted off to sleep with flushed faces and entangled limbs. A soft chirping of a songbird outside Mark's bedroom window stirred Mark awake the next morning. He blinked his sleepy eyes opened and looked over to the other side of the room where he could see Matthew organizing the papers on his desk. Matthew glanced over and noticed Mark starting to wake up. He smiled. Morning, kiddo. Mark got out of bed and stretched and yawned. Morning. Matthew grabbed Mark's cloak off the wall and handed it to Mark, not before kissing him on the cheek. Hey, Mark blushed. What was that for? Matthew ruffled Mark's hair. Just making sure you have a good start for the day. Mark smiled slightly as he dressed himself, grabbed his belongings, and fixed his hair in the mirror. Once Mark was ready to start the day, Matthew opened the bedroom door and offered Mark his hand. Ready? Mark smiled. Yeah. He took Matthew's hand and intertwined his fingers with Matthew's. Let's go. As the two of them left the bedroom, hand in hand, only one thought was left on Mark's mind. I guess some things never change. And as you can see, this is part of a series. I've written more of Mark's adventures in Asker. But we're... Alright. But we will not be, seeing what happens more with Mark and Kieran because... Matthew and Mark, because we're moving on to another fic by me, which is unrelated to Thief of My Heart and A Familiar Face. This time, we have my... So, this next fic is actually, the anniversary fic I wrote for Fire Emblem Heroes. Where is it? Here we go. This one is... Happy birthday, Kieran. Unrelated to the Kieran in, Thief of My Heart. In fact, this Kieran is gender neutral, so, yeah, they'll be referred to as they. This Kieran is unrelated to any other Kieran I've written for. So, here we go! And plus, it's not a pairing with Matthew, it's actually, a pairing with, Sharina this time. So, like, that's also new. That's also a thing. Anyway, summary. Sharina is preparing a surprise party for Kieran. Will the Order of Heroes be able to keep the surprise under wraps? Anyway, happy first anniversary of Fire Emblem Heroes. Here's to another good year. Alright. Okay, so this isn't technically a Blazing Swords related thing, but there's some Blazing Sword characters in here. So, oh, yes, thank you. Thank you, Boo. Thank you for reminding me of that. Alright, there we go. Alright, so, here we go. A quick one-shot for me. Kieran opened every door in the castle they came across, calling Sharina's name. Man, where the hell is she? Kieran? In the distance, Alphonse observed Kieran's mad dash across the corridor and called out to them. Oh, Alphonse! Kieran ran up to the prince. Have you seen Sharina around? It's her team's turn to go to the training tower. Sorry, Kieran, I have not, replied Alphonse. Perhaps she's in the library? The library, huh? Yeah, I haven't checked there yet. Thanks, Alphonse. Kieran dashed off and waved goodbye. He smiled and waved back. When Kieran was out of sight, Alphonse turned to the pillar next to him and called out, Okay, Sharina, they're gone. Sharina peeked out and wiped her brow. Phew! For a second there, I thought I'd get caught. She stepped out from behind the pillar and grinned. Thank you so much, Alphonse. Looks like we bought a little more time to prepare Kieran's birthday surprise. Alphonse crossed his arms. How do you know that Kieran's birthday's today? Have you even asked them? Nope, Sharina giggled. But exactly 1 year ago today, Kieran was summoned to our world, and they made no mention of their birthday at all since they've been here. It's guaranteed to have happened by now. Even if we're a little late on the celebrations, we can still throw this party as a thanks for all the hard work they've done. I do have one question, said Alphonse. How many people are involved in this? Sharina showed her brother a wide grin. Basically everyone in the entire order. Kieran walked into the library and quickly skimmed over the bookshelves to see if they could catch a glimpse of the blonde princess. Not here either. As soon as they were about to give up, Kieran spotted Ray reading in one of the sofas. Yo, Ray! Kieran approached the boy. Ray replied without taking his eyes off the book. Have you seen Sharina at all? Asked Kieran. Nope. Ray flipped to the next page. Been busy reading. Damn it. Kieran scratched their chin. I'm all out of leads. Well, not that I had many leads to begin with, but still. They paced back and forth. Let's see, where else haven't I looked? Kieran stopped and snapped their fingers. The courtyard, duh! That's like Sharina's favorite spot. Ray slammed the book down onto his lap. Wait, Kieran! Kieran turned to Ray. What's up, dude? Ray regained his composure. I just remembered that Sharina passed by here earlier. Ray cleared his throat. Yeah, I think she said she was heading to the training tower portal. For real? I must have missed her. Kieran headed for the library exit and waved to Ray. God damn it. Thanks, Ray. When Kieran was at the door, Ray slumped into his seat and exhaled. Close call. The first thing Kieran noticed when they arrived at the portal room was that only one person from Sharina's team was there. Erica? The blue-haired princess turned around. Oh, Kieran! Any luck finding Sharina? Kieran looked around the room as they continued the conversation. Not at all, but that's not important now. Where's Nino and Olivia? Erica tensed up. Oh, well, Nino had to help Gaius with something, and Olivia said she was busy too. Kieran crossed her arms. Guess that can't be helped. I'll just call in Matthew's team. Ninian is busy as well, Erica piped up. Kieran cocked an eyebrow. Okay, then will Team Celica do? Azura is also busy. Erica grimaced. Why the hell are all the dancers busy? A sudden realization washed over Kieran. Erica, is there something everyone isn't telling me? Kieran, you are simply imagining things. Erica placed a hand on Kieran's shoulder. You know, you've been working so hard trying to gather everyone at the training tower today. Why don't you rest in your chambers for a while? Kieran rubbed the back of their neck. Well, I gotta admit that all that running around kinda tired me out. See? Erica grinned. Here, I'll escort you. Kieran and Erica walked down one of the castle's many hallways to Kieran's room. At the end of the hall, a pair of voices could be heard. Careful on that end, kid. We're almost there. Wait, Gaius, slow down! Kieran and Erica looked over to see Gaius and Nino walking in their direction carrying a large cake. Erica pushed Kieran in the other direction. Let's go the other way, Kieran. We shouldn't get in their way. Kieran tried turning their head to see what was going on, but Erica blocked their vision with her head. Wait, what's going on? Erica! Just stay right here and rest, okay, Kieran? Erica quickly pushed Kieran inside their room and slammed the door shut. Wait! Kieran groaned as they trudged over and plopped onto the bed. God, why is everyone so weird today? As much as they wanted to keep thinking about the situation, Kieran couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. Kieran slowly rose from their bed and took slow, cautious steps to the center of the room. They hovered their right hand over Breidablik, which was hanging from their hip, and examined the room. A quiet rustle emanated from under the bed. Just as Kieran was about to turn around, they were suddenly grabbed from behind. The attacker clamped one hand over Kieran's mouth and the other over their eyes. Kieran tried their best to struggle out of the attacker's grasp. Shh, don't scream. It's just me. At that moment, Kieran recognized their attacker. They stopped resisting, and the attacker uncovered their mouth. Matthew? Bullseye. Kieran balled their hands into fists, trying to resist the urge to knock Matthew in the crotch. I love that line so much. I'm sorry, I just do. Oh my god. Okay, Matthew. 2 questions. Kieran took a deep breath and put up a finger. 1? What the actual hell? A second finger up. 2, why are you still covering my eyes? Allow me to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Kieran could practically hear Matthew's signature cocky grin in his voice. I'm under orders by Sharina to take you to a secret rendezvous point. In one smooth motion, Matthew removed his hand from Kieran's eyes and replaced it with a blindfold. There we go. Ready? Actually, I have one more question, said Kieran. Shoot. Why the hell didn't you just come through the door and do this like a normal person? Matthew patted Kieran's head. And miss out on an opportunity to mess with you? It's like you don't know me at all, Kieran. Kieran groaned. Of course. Okay, I'm going to let go of your hand, Matthew told Kieran. Are we finally here? Kieran grumbled. Not quite yet, replied Matthew. Just follow the sweet sound of my charming voice. Kieran groaned. Kieran rolled her eyes under the blindfold and followed Matthew's voice. That's it. Keep going. Almost there. And stop. Kieran could hear Matthew step behind them. Remove the blindfold. Kieran slipped the blindfold off, and what they saw left their jaw on the floor. Streamers were hung on every pillar in the main hall. Lines of tables of food and drink were all around the hall. A stage was set up with a band at the end of the hall. Every hero in the order was before them. With smiles on their faces, they cheered, Happy birthday! A smile was plastered on Kieran's face. Oh, you guys! Matthew lightly pushed Kieran forward. Go crazy, kid! Today's your day! For the rest of the afternoon and well into the evening, Kieran went around the room thanking every hero for their attendance and joined them in feasting, drinking, and reminiscing the past year. In the middle of a conversation they were having with Robin, Soren, and Corin, Kieran felt a tap on their shoulder. They turned around to see Alphonse. Sharina told me she wanted to meet you in the courtyard, he said. Oh, okay, I'll head there right now. Kieran bowed to the heroes. Sorry guys, gotta go. Enjoy the rest of the party! The courtyard was dark. The only source of light came from the moon up above and a line of lampposts leading to the gazebo in the middle of the area. Kieran followed and illuminated the path until they reached the gazebo. There they saw Sharina standing in the middle, wearing a sleeveless white silk dress with gold trimmings. Kieran's mouth hung open. They were at a loss for words. Sharina walked over and smiled at Kieran. Hey Kieran, enjoying the party? Yeah. Kieran still stood dumbfounded, barely finding the words to say. So, you planned all this? Sharina nodded. I'm glad everything turned out great. Yeah. Excuse me. Kieran rubbed the back of their neck. So, would now be a bad time to tell you it's not my birthday, or... Sharina laughed. Don't worry, I had a feeling that was the case. You've done so much for the Order of Heroes in the past year. Now's a good time to celebrate that. Kieran sighed and smiled. Thank you, Sharina. They looked at Sharina up and down and blurted out, Sharina, you look absolutely stunning. Realizing what they just said, Kieran practically fidgeted with the hem of their cloak. Wait, I just... Oh, jeez. Sharina stepped forward toward Kieran and smiled sweetly. Thank you, Kieran. I'm glad you think so. She pulled down Kieran's hood. You look charming as usual. Kieran's cheeks warmed up at Sharina's comment. Kieran looked in Sharina's eyes, still unsure of what to say to or do next. Music and Azura's melodic voice from the castle's main hall projected to the courtyard. Kieran turned their head toward the sound of the music, the source of the music, then back to Sharina. She stared at them expectantly. Kieran cleared their throat, took a deep breath, and bowed to Sharina. May I have this dance, Your Highness? Sharina curtsied. It would be my pleasure. Sharina took Kieran's hand. Kieran pulled Sharina close, and the two embraced as they stepped in time with the music. This is the best birthday ever, Sharina. Thank you. Sharina nuzzled against Kieran's chest and smiled warmly. You're welcome, Kieran. Just let me know when your actual birthday is. We'll do a proper celebration then. Of course, Kieran chuckled. But still, the effort you put in today was amazing. I loved every bit of it. Kieran looked into Sharina's eyes and smiled. I have no words for just how thankful I am to you. Not just for the party, but for everything you've done for me. I can say the same to you, Sharina blushed. You've done so much for the Order, and you've been such a kind and wonderful person to everyone. Sharina ceased her steps for a moment and cupped Kieran's face. Allow me to express my gratitude. She stood on her tiptoes, brought her face closer to Kieran's, and kissed Kieran on the lips. Happy birthday, Kieran. Alright, author notes, let's go. Just a quick piece of trivia for this fic. The teams that Kieran mentioned when they were talking to Erica are actual team compositions I have in Heroes. They are the following. Nino, Erica, Sharina, and Performing Arts Olivia, Matthew, Ninian, Alphonse, and Anna, Celica, Jenny, Summer, Xander, and Azurva. Readers of my fic of Thief of My Heart may remember that I referenced the last team in Chapter 2 of that fic as well. Anyway, thanks for reading. But yeah, if you do remember, yes, I did actually mention them. Anyway, so that's it for Happy Birthday, Kieran. Next on the list is... What is actually next on the list? Oh, okay. Let me find that one then. Hey, G-Spider, welcome to the stream, buddy. We're reading fanfiction on this wonderful stream. Okay, so... where is it? Here we go. So next we're going to be reading Through the Door. Thanks. Alright. Frickin' where's... Okay. There we go. Alright, so... we got Through the Door, which is a continuation of, Mark and Matthew's story. Yeah. So I kind of wrote this fic kind of because, I just thought the situation would be kind of hilarious to write, honestly. So here we go. Through the Door. Lynn, Elwood, and Hector hear some strange noises. Oh boy, this one's a short one, and I really like this one. That's pretty much all I have to say about this one. Elwood didn't think that fetching Mark for today's war meeting would be a difficult task. However, seeing Lynn crouched down by Mark's bedroom gave him a feeling things weren't going to be that easy. Curious, he approached Lynn. Elwood opened his mouth to speak, and Lynn immediately put a finger to her lips. She then pointed repeatedly at the door. Elwood cocked an eyebrow and pressed his ear against it. Feels good, Mark? Matthew. Alright, yeah, that's the spot. Elwood's eyes widened. Blood rushed to his face. He looked down at Lynn and mouthed to her, "Are they?" Lynn... let's see, where was I? Oh, yeah. Are they... Exactly. Okay. Lynn shook her head as she shrugged. And that's why I don't show my face on streams, because that stuff happens. If you guys need any justification at all as to why I don't show my face on streams, that's why. It's exactly why we can't have fun, nice things. Anyway. Anyway, where was I? Lynn shook her head as she shrugged. Elwood looked at the door again and leaned in close to it, still in disbelief of what he just heard. Holy shit. Ah, fuck! Sorry, was that too hard? Shit, go easy on me there. Lynn clamped a hand over her mouth, muffling a squeal that escaped her throat. Lynn and Elwood glanced at each other, their bodies tensed up as they eavesdropped on Matthew and Mark's private time. Moments later, Hector walked down the corridor. When he saw Lynn and Elwood by the entrance to Mark's bedroom, he called out to them, "Lynn! Elwood, what are—" They shushed him in unison and pointed at the door. Hector furrowed his brow and marched to the door. He leaned his whole body into it, trying to get a better sense of what's happening on the other side. God, you're so good at this. Want me to keep going? Please. Hector's breath hitched and... Okay, hold on 1 second before I... Yeah, hold on. Hold on, I need to do some housekeeping. 1 second. Sorry for interrupting this, guys, but I really gotta do this. Okay, there we go. Alright, where were we? Okay, here we go. Hector's breath hitched. He looked at Elowood and Lynn. Both their faces were beet red. Hector closed his eyes and sighed. He said in a low voice, full of determination, "I've got this." Lynn and Elowood glanced at Hector, then at each other in confusion. Hector stepped back and took a deep breath. He reeled his arm back, curled his hand into a fist, and punched Mark's door open with full force. The three lords rushed into the bedroom, where they saw Matthew straddled on top of a half-naked Mark, who was lying on his stomach on the bed. Startled by the commotion, Mark and Matthew looked at the three intruders. Matthew slyly grinned at Hector. "My lord, it's quite rude to enter without knocking, you know." Hector tried his best to keep a straight face. "What's going on in here?" "Matthew was giving me the best back massage ever." Mark grinned widely and gave a thumbs up. "Seriously, this guy's pretty damn good with his hands." "Well, Elowood cleared his throat. "Commander Anna asked me to fetch you for today's war meeting, Mark." "Fuck, it's that time already?" Mark gestured to Matthew to get off of him. The two of them got out of bed and Mark got dressed. He walked to the door and waved to the trio. "Thanks, Lord Elowood. I'll see you guys later." He then nodded to Matthew. "You coming with?" Matthew nodded back. "I'll catch up. I wish to speak with these three first." Mark gave Matthew a thumbs up and left to go to the war room. Matthew approached Lynn, Elowood, and Hector. The three of them averted their gazes. Lynn rubbed her arm, Elowood fiddled with the hem of his shirt, and Hector crossed his arms. Matthew chuckled to himself, amused by the awkward position the lords put themselves in. "Thought we were doing something else?" "No, of course not," barked Hector. Lynn tensed up. "Why would we—" The three of them continued to make excuses as they gestured frantically and stumbled over their words. Matthew interrupted them. "If you were here last night..." Matthew showed the three lords a sly smile. "You'd know Mark's a screamer." With that, Elowood, Lynn, and Hector watched... hold on. Still gotta... Hold on, I gotta... Sorry guys, more housekeeping to do. How do I... Okay, yeah, it should be... Okay. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So, with that... Yeah. With that, Elowood... Freaking god damn it. With that... Fucking god damn it. There we go. Okay. With that, Elowood, Lynn, and Hector watched Matthew walk out of the room with reddened faces and mouths agape. So, yep. That's the end of that fic. I don't really have much to say other than for this one. It was kind of a short one. Really fun to write. Anyway, on to the next one. Okay, so the next one that I published was... Oh my god, not this one! Oh man, this one... Can't believe this one's next. Oh no. Okay, before we get to this one... Oh god. Oh god, I can't believe this one's next. Oh my god. Okay, let me change. Okay. This one was inspired by a friend of mine and a post they had on Tumblr, and, oh boy. This is something I normally do not write about, but, oh my god. Oh god, this one. Anyway, the tags should really say everything about it. Oh, please, don't give me that. Anyway, this one. This is also another short one. Oh, God, this one. Okay. This next one is, this doesn't deserve a title, because it really does not deserve a title. It didn't even deserve to get published. Okay. Summary, in which Matthew sucks Kieran's toes. Just take the fic and leave you with my shame. So my friend, Cav, they're the one responsible for this. Cav, if you're watching this later, this one's all your fault. This one is all your fault. And this is a non-canon sequel to Thief of My Heart. It may be in the same it may be in the same series, in the Kieran sexual escape ad series, but it's not canon. It's not canon. It's not canon. It's not canon. Oh boy. Anyway, let's just get this one over with. For Kieran, cuddling with Matthew in her bed after a particularly long and exhausting day would be absolute heaven for her. Today, she just so happened to pay heaven a visit. Kieran hummed happily to herself as she nuzzled against Matthew's chest. Matthew chuckled as he stroked her hair. Enjoying yourself? Yes. Kieran limply wrapped an arm around Matthew's body and buried her face further into Matthew's chest. Matthew smiled and rubbed Kieran's back. Hey, Kieran? Kieran replied back without looking up. Could I, A light blush rose to Matthew's cheeks. Could I do something a little weird with you? Kieran glanced up and stifled a laugh. Dude. She gestured to her drawer full of sex toys and she brought from Anna many weeks back. We've done all sorts of kinky shit since we've been together. I highly doubt whatever you have in mind will be too weird for my tastes. Matthew shrugged. Okay, if you say so. Could you lay down on the bed for me then? Kieran nodded and stretched herself out on the bed. She looked at Matthew coyly. Ready whenever you are. Matthew grinned as he positioned himself at the foot of the bed. He gently lifted Kieran's foot and peeled off her sock. Matthew closed his eyes and kissed her foot. Kieran craned her neck up, looking at Matthew curiously. He played with her toes, lightly tapping them and wiggling them around. Kieran curled her toes, threw her head back, and quietly giggled in response. Oh my god, I can't believe I wrote this. Hey, that tickles. Matthew smiled slyly and kissed Kieran's foot last time. He then took her big toe into his mouth and started sucking on it. And Kieran's reaction right here is pretty much the same as mine if this were to happen to me. Kieran's eyes widened. She's catapulted her body up and stared at Matthew with a mix of disgust and confusion. Matthew, what? What? Matthew looked back at Kieran and responded with her toe still in his mouth. Whoa. Kieran kept opening and closing her mouth, raising and lowering a finger, trying to find the words to say. In the end, she facepalmed and groaned in frustration. You know what? Never mind, I'm way too tired for this shit. She flopped back onto the bed and loosely gestured to Matthew. Fuck it. Do whatever foot stuff you want, I don't give a fuck right now. Matthew shrugged and continued to suck Kieran's toe. He teased it with his tongue, gliding it all around the toe. He closed his lips around the toe and sucked on it harder. Groaning from pleasure, Matthew continued to suck and started to rub his hardening erection. He took the toe out of his mouth and moved on to the next one, gently closing his lips around it and licking all over. Just as he did before, Matthew's breathing became more uneven as his cock twitched in his hand. He let out a gasp and took one of Kieran's toes into his mouth, moaning as he proceeded to suck on both of them. Kieran covered his face with her hands, hoping that Matthew doesn't notice her flushed face. As much as she hated to admit it, hearing Matthew enjoy himself made Kieran feel hot and bothered as well. She craned her neck up to see Matthew going to town on her foot. She swore at herself and she laid her head back down on the pillow. She reached down her pants and fingered her wet hole, praying to God her boyfriend doesn't interpret this as enjoying her toes being sucked. Matthew glanced up at Kieran, saw her fingering himself. He picked up his pace with the sucking and the rubbing of his erection. He grunted with pleasure as his muscles tightened and his body grew hotter. Oh my god. The two of them continued to pleasure themselves until a wave of ecstasy overcame them. They yelped and collapsed into the bed, heaving and gasping. Matthew crawled up on the bed and laid himself next to Kieran. He showed her a tired grin. Had fun? Kieran narrowed her eyes at Matthew. She let out an annoyed sigh, faced the ceiling, and face-palmed with her clean hand. Are you mad? Matthew frowned. Are you mad? Kieran stayed silent. Matthew rubbed the back of his neck. If you want to call it even, you can return the favor. Absolutely not. Notes? I really should leave Tumbra. I really should. Anyway, that's the end of that one. We're never going back to that one ever again. Next! Okay. Alright, good. We're on to a good one. We're on to a good series next. So, Let's see, where is it? Here we go. Next up on the list is... I wish it didn't. I honestly wish it didn't. Okay. Alright, next up is Mark's summoning mishaps. So this one is basically just a collection of little fics of Mark summoning heroes to ask her. So this one's fun. Mark summons heroes from the world of blazing. Shenanigans ensue. I do plan for writing more characters into this. I just haven't really found the inspiration to lately. But anyway, Chapter 1, Ursula. Alternate title, Mark the Bisexual Disaster. Another battle won. Anna announced proudly as she slapped Mark's back. Great tacticians as usual, Mark. Anna sighed. Still not used to that. Mark smiled at her. No worries. Anyway, Ursula should be waiting for us in the summoning room now. Let's get going. Right. Anna nodded to Alphonse and Sharina. Let's go, you two. Mark led the Askren trio down the main halls, walking backwards towards the summoning room. We're about to encounter a powerful assassin who shows no mercy. Look alive, everyone. Don't let her intimidate you. Anna and Alphonse and Sharina nodded as they marched to the room. When the group arrived at the entrance, Mark addressed the trio one last time. Let me handle her. I've dealt with this woman face to face when I was a kid. I could damn well do it again. Sharina gave Mark a stern look. Good luck. Mark nodded to Sharina, turned around, and opened the doors with arms outstretched. As soon as he saw Ursula, two things popped into Mark's head. One, I'm not gonna let her scare me. And two, holy shit, were her boobs always that huge? Ursula approached Mark. So you're the one responsible for bringing me here. She leaned down and examined Mark's face. A spark of familiarity glowed in her eyes. You. Mark's eyes darted back and forth between Ursula's chest and eyes. Yes, it's me, the tactician who served Lord Elowood, but that's... Mark caught another glimpse of Ursula's breasts. That's not important right now. Mark furrowed his brow and tried his best to speak in a stern, professional tone. Ursula, boob crow, blue crow! Anna, Alphonse, and Sharina looked at each other with worry. Mark cleared his throat. We'll be working together from now on, so let's let the past stay in the past. He held out a hand. It's good to have you with us. It's good to have you with us. He retracted his hand and took a deep breath. His eyes landed on Ursula's chest again, and he immediately made eye contact with her. Let's do our best. Best! Mark buried his face in his hands. Fuck! He peeked up between his fingers. Ursula narrowed his eyes at Mark. I should shut up now, shouldn't I? If you value your life, then yes. Okay, but this entire paragraph, just everything... I loved that part. I loved it. Alright. Chapter 2, Day of Devotion. Alternate title, You Are Not the Mother? Question mark. This one is just silly. This one is just really silly. I don't really have much else to... Based on the Valentine's Day banner for Fire Emblem Heroes. Alright, here we go. Mark scouted out the mess hall and found Lynn, Elwood, and Hector, Roy, and Lelina sitting at a table together. He hardly recognized them at first with their attire much more formal than usual. Mark called out to them and waved to them, and they greeted him back. Mark approached the group and pulled up a seat next to Lynn. Mark leaned over to Lynn, pointed to Roy and Lelina, and whispered, So, who are the mothers? She almost spit out her drink and grumbled back, Mark, that's a very personal question. Okay, different question. He smirked. Who's the lucky man, Lynn? Lynn smacked Mark upside the head with her present. Okay, so the way I kind of imagine this to kind of be... The way I write things, I usually kind of imagine them like as if they were like a comic strip or something. And this particular fic, I kind of imagined as like a 4-panel comic with Mark in the first panel approaching them, Lynn, him like sitting down next to Lynn, actually no. 4th panel would definitely be Lynn smacking Mark upside the head. That is definitely the last panel, but yeah. Anyway. But yeah, that's how I tend to like... So that's why I kind of think my fics kind of focus more on like people's actions as they kind of do things more so than like the tone they say it or whatever. It's because I have a very visual kind of storytelling, I think. Anyway. Chapter 3, Nino. Okay. Alternate title, Why Mark Shouldn't Be a Mage. This one I had fun with. I had a lot of fun with this one. I do have a lot more to say for this particular chapter, but that's all in the notes. Anyway, Mark stared down at the pedestal with a dead expression. In the name of the gods of this world, please give me a green stone. One by one, the 5 spots on the pedestal glowed and revealed a summon stone. Red, colorless, blue, green, blue. Hold up! Yo! Mark blurted out. He snatched the green stone, loaded it into Brightblick along with a handful of orbs, and fired. From its muzzle emerged a young green-haired girl wearing a purple cape and holding a green tome. Her head darted around the room as she tried to figure out where exactly she was. What is this place? Mark's eyes widened in amazement. Nino? The girl's head perked up and she turned around. Huh? She approached Mark and looked him up and down. Do I know you? Mark crouched down in front of her and smiled. It's good to see you again, big sis. Nino narrowed her eyes at Mark. What are you? She leaned in closer to his face. No way. Nino stepped back. You're playing a trick on me. There's no way you're Mark. Aw, come on. Mark grimaced. Is me calling you big sis not enough? Nino pouted. Of course not. I don't know how some stranger knows that Mark called me his big sister, or how he knows Mark in the first place, but you know you can't be him. He was years younger than me. Mark sighed. Yeah, I guess it's kind of hard to believe. How'd I be able to convince you? Nino crossed her arms and closed her eyes. After a few moments, her eyes shot open. She pointed straight at Mark and locked eyes with him. Tell me something only Mark would know. Mark sat down and bowed his head deep in thought. It was then a fond memory came flooding back. Remember when you tried to teach me how to cast Hellfire? Nino and Mark sat in an empty dirt road, contemplating the open Hellfire tome in front of them. Maybe try reading this part? Nino pointed at a paragraph. All right. Mark started reading along until Nino raised a hand. Wait, no, that doesn't sound right either. Mark pouted. I don't think this is gonna work, big sis. Hold on, I know we can do this. Nino quickly flipped the pages and pointed at a random paragraph. This was the one, I can feel it! Mark narrowed her eyes at the paragraph. If you say so. He took a deep breath and read the paragraph. With each word that Mark uttered, a fireball grew in size steadily above him and Nino. Nino's eyes lit up as she looked up at the fireball. Mark, you're doing it! Keep going! Mark glanced up at the growing fireball and smiled wide. He stood up, picked up the tome, and held it tightly as he continued reading the passage aloud. At the last word, the fireball zoomed past the pair and landed dangerously close to Jafar and Legald, who were relaxing near the edge of the army's campsite. The 2 former Black Fang members stood up and glared at Nino and Mark's direction. Nino and Mark whipped their heads around, first to each other, then to Legald and Jafar. Panicked, they pointed at each other. He did it! She did it! I like that part. It's cute. And we got a pretty good scolding from Legalt after that. Mark rubbed the back of his neck. I'm honestly surprised Jafar didn't try to kill me. Nino threw herself at Mark and held him in a tight hug. Mark! She held back sobs. I thought I'd never see you again. Mark sighed and smiled. Sorry for worrying you, Nino. He hugged Nino back. Your little bro's back now. Love that last part. So good! Anyway. Alright, notes. To tell you the truth, Mark's reunion with Nino was the first one I wanted to write. Was the one I wanted to write first, but the ideas for Ursula and the Valentine's Day units came to mind before I could probably draft out this one. That's honestly what happened. Alright. Okay, so we're kind of running out of time here. I kind of want to... As much as I want to go through other fics, I do want to get to Commander Anna's de-stressing program. Because I am... Like I promised in the description, I would be reading out Chapter 4, aka Matthew's chapter, this stream before it actually gets published. So let's just skip over to this one. We'll probably... if you guys want me to continue by, like, reading the rest, like, to Layla, if you guys want me to read to Layla and Simple Sailor Suit in some other stream, and Kissing Practice, I'll read all 3 of those. Probably in a later stream if you guys want me to. I could do it tomorrow if you guys want. But anyway, let's do Commander Anna's de-stressing program now. Alright, here we go. It's my most popular fic right now. I mean, just look at the stats here. 62 kudos. I think that's the most kudos I've ever gotten for a fic ever. I think it has like twice the amount of kudos that Thief of My Heart has, at least. Oh my god, this fic. I'm really proud of it, honestly. Alright. So with Commander Anna's de-stressing program, I mentioned before that I'm kind of afraid of, like, writing characters out of character, so this is kind of me trying to get out of my comfort zone. So, it's more than just Matthew! It's more than just Matthew, and I'm actually quite proud of myself for the characters I have written for so far, so here we go! Alright, with the war against Muspel stressing out the Ward of Heroes, Anna decides something needs to be done. Chapter 1, Day 1, 10 a.m. Prologue. Don't expect anything smutty in this first chapter. I still need to decide who gets banging first. And I did have a vote of who would be banging Kieran first, and we do have 5 heroes. I mean, 5 chapters in the way, so here we go. Alright, here we freaking go. One otherwise normal day in Castle Asker, Anna gathered every adult hero in the Order of Heroes to the War Room for an urgent meeting. Confused murmurs and wary glances were exchanged across the room. Not even Alphonse and Sharina were aware of what Anna planned to discuss. Earlier, Alphonse asked Kieran if she knew what the commander was up to. She only responded with a reddened face and her eyes to the ground, which worried the prince more than he already had been. Once all the heroes were gathered inside... Oh, thank you. Thank you, Boo. Alright, there we go. Oh wow, that's long. Yeah, you know what. There we go. There we go. Okay. Okay, once all the heroes were gathered inside, Anna rose from her chair and cleared her throat. The crowd's whispers died down as Anna began. Everyone here? Excellent. Anna stood tall and continued. As you all know, the war... Excuse... As you all know, the war against Muspel has been stressful on all of us, to the point where our performance on the battlefield has declined. A few heroes nodded silently in agreement. So, as a stress reliever of sorts, the summoner and I have come up with a solution. Anna gestured to Kieran with a flourish. Take it away, Kieran! She slowly stood up from her seat, and with her head bowed and her hood pulled up over half her face. She fidgeted with her cloak as she spoke. So, our solution to the problem is, She glanced over to Anna. She nodded and gave her 2 thumbs up. Kieran sighed. There was no way out of this one. She took a deep breath and puffed out her chest. I'm gonna be the Order of Heroes cum dump! For a moment, everyone in the room was speechless. Even Anna didn't expect Kieran to phrase it like that. It took a few seconds for Kieran to fully process the words that came out of her mouth. When she finally did, she collapsed into her seat with her face buried in her hands and face desked. Somewhere in the middle of the audience, Niles piped up. Care to repeat that, Summoner? I couldn't quite hear you. Shut it, Niles! Kieran let out a muffled yell. Anna blinked at Kieran, still dumbfounded, then turned her attention back to the heroes. Well, yes. Well, as Kieran said, kind of. She will be offering her body as a tool to release any built-up tension you may have. She cleared her throat and continued. To make this as organized and fair as possible, there will be a sign-up sheet by the entrance to the wine cellar to reserve a time slot between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. for each night this month. For now, please do not sign up for more than 1 slot. Also, please read the rules and regulations posted next to the sign-up sheet. Any questions can come to me or Kieran. You are all dismissed. The heroes exited the room with varied levels of enthusiasm. Kieran could hear many of them screaming at each other about time slots in the wine cellar as they left. As the room emptied, Kieran thought back to her conversation with Anna a couple weeks ago and how this whole mess began. Listen, Kieran, began Anna as she ate the food off her plate. Heroes naturally gravitate to you because of Brightblick's power. I'm just saying we should use that power to our benefit. I don't know, Anna. Kieran played with her dinner. I mean, I wouldn't mind doing this for the army's sake, but don't you think this is a little... If it's your health that's a concern, I promise we'll have our best physicians and healers check up on you each day. Anna took another bite. And I know you, Kieran. You've been waiting for an opportunity like this, you big old perv. Kieran practically slammed her utensils down on the table. Anna, please! Don't give me that. Anna pointed her spoon at Kieran. Come on, there's gotta be at least one hero you'd want to get in bed with, right? Although Anna was correct, Kieran couldn't admit out loud anytime soon. There were multiple heroes Kieran wanted to have sex with, sure. The summoner herself and the Askren the commander herself and the Askren Prince and Princess weren't exempt from that long list either. However, she was still hesitant. Kieran mulled it over in her head. The thought of every hero hero in the order, coming to her chambers one by one to pleasure themselves with her body ran through her mind. Their hands caressing her, every inch of her, a finger or a cock pumping in and out of her, the moans of pleasure echoing in the room. Kieran's knees grew weak. Hell, why just stop at one hero at a time? What about threesomes? Foursomes? A whole damn orgy could happen and Kieran would enjoy every minute of it. Not to mention all the kinky fantasies she's had about various heroes dominating her. Or the hero she'd dominate. Your flushed face tells me you like the idea. Anna's voice interrupted Kieran's train of thought. Kieran's eyes widened. She cleared her throat and spooned another bite of dinner into her mouth. Well, I'm not against it. Great! Anna beamed. Let's discuss this more in my chambers after we're done here. I want to make sure this is as pleasurable for you as it is for the rest of the order. Kieran groaned at the memory. Even back then she knew this was a bad idea, but at the same time... You still there, Kieran? Anna playfully poked the back of Kieran's head. She had looked up at Anna with a blank face. Anna gave Kieran a reassuring pat on the shoulder and sighed. Well, you certainly laid that on thick. She winked. I guess there's no beating around the bush when it comes to something like this, huh? Kieran sat up and shook her head. I don't know what I was thinking. She looked around the room. Hey, where's Alphonse and Sharina? I'm surprised they didn't stick around and try to scold us about this. Anna giggled. I'm guessing you didn't see Alphonse bolt out the door and Sharina chase after him as soon as the meeting ended? I'd never expect Alphonse of all people to be excited about something like this, said Kieran. Anna cocked an eyebrow at Kieran. Do you not know? She stopped herself and chuckled. Oh, Kieran, I'm so glad you're not as dense when you're strategizing. Kieran furrowed her brow. What's that supposed to... Anna shook her head. Think nothing of it. She started walking toward the door and waved goodbye. Have a good rest of your day, Kieran, and make sure you prepare yourself for tonight. With a wink, Anna left the room and shut the door behind her. Kieran rested her head on her hand, nursing a newly formed headache. Hopefully the first person will be gentle. And they're not, unfortunately. Alright, so, yes, I did have the poll, and any ties will be given special treatment. Just letting you all know that Chapter 5 will be getting that special treatment. Just saying. Anyway, Chapter 2. Night 1, 9 p.m. Lord Grima. Oh boy. This one was fun to write. Like, so much fun to write. Anyway, it was now 8 p.m. Anna and Kieran marched their way to the wine cellar to retrieve the sign-up sheet. Moment of truth. Anna looked to Kieran. You ready? Kieran shrugged. I guess. Oh, lighten up. Anna patted Kieran's back. It's probably not going to be that bad. With all the rules we've set up, there's no way this will go wrong. Yeah, maybe you're right. Kieran rubbed the back of her neck. Anna winked. So anyone in particular hoping to get together with first? Kieran averted her gaze as a blush colored her cheeks. Anna put a hand on her hip. Come on, Kieran, spill it. Kieran refused to look at Anna as they walked. Anna leaned in closer to her. Anna, come on, mumbled Kieran. Anna leaned in closer and closer to Kieran until she was leaning on Kieran's side. With a huff, Kieran pulled her hood up and looked to the ground. Alphonse. Anna stopped dead in her tracks and looked to Kieran with stars in her eyes. Oh! What? Kieran stepped away and put her hands up defensively. Anna grabbed Kieran by the shoulders and shook her. Kieran, my gods, why didn't we do this sooner? What are you talking about? Kieran's voice wavered as Anna shook her. Anna grasped Kieran's hand and ran full speed, dragging Kieran along the rest of the way. Come on, we gotta get to that sign-up sheet. Anna, what's gotten into you? At some point during their run, Anna and Kieran got separated, so Kieran trudged the rest of the way to the wine cellar on her own. When she got there, she placed a hand on the nearest wall to steady herself and caught her breath. She saw the commander holding the sign-up sheet in her hands. She walked over to her. So, who's first? Anna grimaced as she handed the parchment over. See for yourself. Kieran scanned the top of the page, and when she saw the first name, a chill ran down her spine. Grima! She rested her head back against the wall and groaned. Oh, fuck me. Hey, say that when you're actually with the guy, Anna laughed. Kieran shot the commander a glare. Anna, no. Anna, yes. Anna grinned triumphantly. Anyway, let's head back to your room and get things ready for tonight. So, should I keep my clothes on for this, or... asked Kieran as she laid in bed rubbing her clit. Knowing Grima, he'd probably want to disrobe you himself, Anna replied as she arranged a collection of sex toys on Kieran's desk. You know what? Yeah, that sounds about right. Kieran closed her eyes and continued to rub her clit. Her mind wandered to Grima and how her night with him would go. Him ripping her clothes to shreds, biting her, scratching her, marking his territory. Hey, you just need to make yourself wet, not make yourself come. Once again, Anna's voice interrupted Kieran's thoughts. Kieran pouted. Can't a girl enjoy her sexual fantasies in peace? Not when she's on duty. Anna ruffled Kieran's hair and headed to the door. Grima should be coming any minute. I'll let him in once you're ready. Once Kieran gave her a thumbs up, Anna left the room and shut the door behind her. A few minutes later, a knock came to the door. Grima's here! Anna called out from the other side. Send him in! Kieran rose from the bed, ready to greet her visitor. The door opened, and Grima sauntered into the room. Summoner. He let out a low growl and licked his lips. Kieran greeted Grima with her arms outstretched. I'm all yours for the next 4 minutes, Lord Grima. Do whatever your heart desires. Grima shrugged off his coat and marched toward Kieran. He loomed over her and showed her a menacing, toothy grin. With pleasure. Without a moment's hesitation, Grima lunged forward and pinned Kieran down to the bed. She gasped as Grima planted his lips on her neck, sucking harder on her skin. Grima ripped up Kieran's shirt, exposing her front. Kieran shivered from the sudden exposure. Grima pawed at one of her breasts and reached down her pants and fingered her leaking cunt. A moan gasped from Kieran's lips as Grima's fingers swirled around her walls. Grima's mouth trailed down her collarbone, then to her breast, leaving hickeys along the way. The sensations overwhelmed Kieran. She wrapped her arms around Grima's body and cried out, Lord Grima, please! That's it, Grima groaned. Keep calling out for me, worm. Grima's name spilled out of Kieran's throat as he teased her relentlessly. She grasped at the bread sheets and squirmed from the Vel Dragon's touch. Watching Kieran writhe underneath him, excited Grima more. He took a nibble into his mouth and sucked, letting his tongue circle around the now erect nub. Kieran moaned, Make me come, Lord Grima. Please, I'm so close. I'm so close. Grima laughed. Already? I haven't even gotten started. He got off of Kieran, unbuckled his belt, and pulled down his pants and small clothes. Kieran propped herself up to see Grima's exposed nether regions. There before her is Grima's cock already erect. Not only did his size surprise her, but the scales that adorned his length were something she didn't expect either. Her eyes widened as she tried to take in the sight. Grima smirked at Kieran's shocked expression. What's the matter, summoner? Expected something different. Kieran couldn't take her eyes off it. She wanted to say something about it with some amount of intelligence, but her exhaustion and arousal prevented her from doing so. All that came out was, You have a dragon dick! Grima let out a low laugh. Yes, well, this dragon dick needs some attention. He crawled back onto the bed and scooted himself up to Kieran's face. He directed his tip to her lips. Open up. Kieran obliged, and Grima shoved his entire length down her throat. She gagged on his cock and tried her best not to bite down on it. The feeling of flesh and scales brushing up against the inside of her mouth made Kieran's body heat up. She could only imagine how it'd feel inside her pussy. Grima pumped in and out of her vigorously, panting heavily as he did so. The more he thrusted, the more his chest and lower body grew warmer. His legs tensed up from the pleasure coursing through his body. The rhythm of his thrust became more and more uneven as his orgasm approached. He pulled out of Kieran's mouth, deciding another hold of hers deserved its girth. Kieran coughed and gagged on her spit as she tried to properly breathe again. Grima sat at the edge of the bed and lifted Kieran onto his lap. He held her close and started biting her shoulder and scratching her back. Kieran cried out and held Grima tightly. Her entrance was dripping on Grima's leg. He smiled in Kieran's growing ecstasy. Grima whispered into Kieran's ear, his warm breath making her tremble. You may be offering your body to the others, but mark my words. You are mine, summoner. Mine and mine alone. He nibbled her ear. Don't ever forget that. Lord Grima... Kieran gulped. Take me. Upon hearing her request, Grima held Kieran by the hips and pulled her into him. Kieran inhaled sharply as Grima's cock filled her. The bumpiness of the scales was unlike anything Kieran felt before. She humped on Grima's leg, wanting to feel all of it inside her. She repeatedly moaned Grima's name under her breath. Grima thrusted into Kieran in sync with her humping. Look at me, summoner, he commanded. Kieran obeyed and stared at him with glazed eyes. Yes, Grima moaned, refusing to take his eyes off of Kieran's flushed face. Grima let out a guttural groan and held Kieran down, spilling his seed into her. Kieran soon came afterward. All the tension in her body was released, replaced by overwhelming pleasure. She leaned her limp body against Grima's. Once he came back to his senses, Grima cradled Kieran in his arms and gently laid her on the bed. He stroked her hair and whispered into her ear, Remember what I told you, summoner. Grima rose from the bed, dressed himself, and exited the room. Kieran laid still, catching her breath, and stared at the ceiling. Only one thought came to her mind. How the hell am I going to survive the rest of the night? Okay, so... Yes, for the character poll, I had to make sure that each hero listed had a plausible reason for getting to the sign-up sheet. We'll go over the notes some other time, because now, Night 1. Check it. Chapter 3, Night 1, 10 p.m. with Alphonse. Here we go! Fuck! Kieran yelped as Anna dabbed an alcohol-soaked cloth onto another bite mark. I'm almost done, said Anna. Sorry about all this, Kieran. She frowned at the sight of Kieran's marked body. If I anticipated Grima would be this rough with you, I'd... No worries. Kieran caressed a love bite on her neck with her fingertips. I don't mind this, she said with a smile. Anna sighed and shook her head. Masochist. She glanced at the clock. It read 9:50 p.m. Well, Alphonse should be stopping by in a few... A knock on the door. Kieran? It's Alphonse. The prince's voice came from the other side. Anna stifled a laugh. Of course he'd be here early. Anna finished disinfecting the last of Grima's love marks and rose from the bed. I'll invite him in. You get dressed. Kieran whined. Can't I just stay naked? Alphonse is going to faint in the doorway if he sees you naked right away, Anna replied. Kieran raised a hand to object, but then lowered it once she put some thought into it. Okay, yeah, that would probably happen. Anna left the room as Kieran grabbed a fresh set of her summoner uniform from the closet and dressed herself. Once her clothes were on, Kieran sat at the foot of the bed, patiently waiting for the prince. A few moments passed, and the door opened, with Alphonse's head poking out from behind. Kieran? Kieran gave him a small wave. Hey, Alphonse, come in! Alphonse tiptoed inside and quietly shut the door behind him. He took slow, hesitant steps towards Kieran. Kieran observed Alphonse's movements, noting how nervous he seemed to be. She giggled. Oh, come on, no need to be shy. She stood, sauntered over to him, and wrapped an arm around his waist. We both know what you're here for. Blood rose to his cheeks as he stared down wide-eyed at her. He cleared his throat. Yes, right. With a coy smile, she turned around and glanced back at Alphonse. She sashayed towards the bed, slipping her coat off and not even subtly shaking her ass with each step as she did so. Alphonse pulled at his collar and followed Kieran, keeping his distance. Kieran sat at the edge of the bed and crossed her legs. She beckoned to Alphonse to come closer and winked. He obliged and sat a few inches away from Kieran. Alphonse sat rigid, staring straight ahead with his hands on his lap. Kieran sighed and scooted over to the prince. His breath hitched. You know, Kieran leaned towards Alphonse's face. I wanted to do this with you first. His eyebrows raised. Is that so? Alphonse's voice trailed off as he took in Kieran's presence. He gulped. His body tensed even more. Why me? Kieran smiled warmly. I always thought you were kind of cute. She pressed her body up against his and placed a hand on his thigh. And your spring festival outfit didn't leave much to the imagination. Alphonse's face reddened out, both out of arousal and embarrassment. Please don't bring that up now. Kieran cupped Alphonse's cheek. You're so cute when you're embarrassed. Kieran pressed her lips up against his and pushed him down onto the bed. She straddled on Alphonse's hips. His lips parted to let out a surprised gasp, and Kieran seized the opportunity to force her tongue inside the prince's mouth. Alphonse quietly moaned and squeezed his eyes shut. He held the back of Kieran's head and tightly wrapped an arm around her torso, refusing to let her warmth leave him for even a second. Their tongues slid and glided across each other, their bodies heated up. Kieran could feel Alphonse's length harden against the fabric of her pants. She broke from the kiss for just a moment and whispered, 1 second. Alphonse let her go, and Kieran sat up. She pulled her undershirt off, revealing her round breasts. She winked down at Alphonse as she rubbed them. Like what you see? Alphonse eyed the tiny love marks trailing Kieran's neck and breasts. Those bruises... Kieran stopped. Yeah. She laughed to herself. Those were from Grima earlier. I hope you don't mind. Upon hearing Grima's name, Alphonse sat up and planted his lips on one of the hickeys and sucked. Kieran yelped from Alphonse's sudden response. Alphonse! She embraced him as he attempted to cover Grima's hickey with his own. Alphonse's lips traced down the line of love bites, sucking on each one, making their own fresh marks on Kieran's skin. Kieran moaned breathlessly into Alphonse's ear. Alphonse, oh God, Alphonse! As soon as the last hickey was taken care of, Alphonse pulled off his shirt and pulled Kieran into another hungry kiss. The two of them collapsed back onto the bed, and Kieran lifted herself up slightly to pull down Alphonse's pants and underwear. His cock sprung up, begging for attention. Alphonse moaned. Kieran, please, she whispered back. Of course. She kissed his forehead and slipped her pants and panties off, uncovering her wet opening. Kieran positioned herself on top, just above Alphonse's tip. Ready? Alphonse nodded. Yes. She loaded herself onto the prince's throbbing member, and the both of them cried out in ecstasy as she did so. Kieran kept a steady rhythm of raising and lowering herself on Alphonse's cock, drinking in his pleasured moans. Her needy cunt took in more of his cock inch by inch each time she lowered herself. Oh, Alphonse, she cooed. I've been looking forward to this. Looking into Alphonse's eyes, she smiled. This is better than I could ever imagined. Alphonse smiled back and started thrusting into her in sync with her rhythm. Kieran held Alphonse's hands. He smiled at the sweet gesture and thrusted more deliberately. The more they moved, the more the pleasure washed over them. They moaned each other's names over and over, their volume increasing with each thrust. The pair sped up more and more until they both came. Kieran let herself fall into Alphonse's arms, and he slowly embraced her. He stroked her hair and kissed the top of her head. Panting heavily, Kieran said, I hope that was good for you. It was. Alphonse kissed her one last time. After a few moments, Alphonse spoke up. Kieran, breathing heavily, he continued, I want to tell you something. It's very important. What is it? Kieran asked. We've known each other for a long time now. Alphonse hesitated, trying to get his words straight. You're such an amazing person, and honestly, he gulped, I feel to have come to admire you. As more than just a comrade, at least. Alphonse? He bit his lip and took a deep breath. Kieran, the thing is... Suddenly, the bedroom door burst open. Time's up! Anna yelled. She approached the pair and jerked her thumb backward toward the exit. It's 10:45, Alphonse. Time to go. He looked to Anna, then back to Kieran. He forced a smile. Perhaps another time, Kieran. Okay. Kieran rolled off of Alphonse, and he climbed out of bed. He gathered his clothes and approached the door. He showed Kieran a sad smile and gave her a small wave. When she waved back, he closed the door behind him without a word. I promise I don't hate Alphonse. I actually ship him into Summoner really hard. Yeah. Anyway, on to the moment we've all been waiting for. It's a draft. It hasn't been posted yet, but you're all gonna see it here. Chapter 4, Night 1, 11 p.m. Matthew. Here we freaking go. Kieran gathered her clothes and put them on as she pondered over what happened moments earlier. Did you do that on purpose? Kieran asked Anna. Anna cocked an eyebrow at her. Do what on purpose? Kieran replied as she fixed her coat and undershirt. You know, barge in just as Alphonse was going to say something to me. What? It was exactly 10:45. I had to kick him out. That was one of our rules, remember? Anna narrowed her eyes. And what do you mean he was going to say something? Like what? Kieran shrugged. I don't know. He said it was important. She laughed. Looking back, it sounded like he was going to confess his love or something. But that's ridiculous, right? Anna's eyes widened and her mouth hung open. She slouched and buried her face in her hands. Gods, what have I done? Anna? Kieran held her by the shoulders. I'm so sorry, Alphonse. Anna whimpered into her palms. What? Kieran shook Anna. Commander, snap out of it! A knock on the door came, and the two snapped back to reality. Hey, it's Matthew. A voice called out from the other side. I'll go get him. Anna groaned and trudged to the door. Though she was still confused about what just happened, Kieran decided to drop it and laid on the bed. Moments later, the door opened and Matthew walked in. Hey. Kieran sat up and smiled at the thief. Hey, you. Hey, yourself. She raised a finger. Okay. Before we start, I have one question. Shoot. She narrowed her eyes. Why? No offense, Matthew, but we hardly ever talked before this other than on the battlefield, so... He shrugged. I figured you'd ask that. He approached the bed and pointed at the empty spot next to Kieran. May I? Kieran gestured back. By all means. Matthew settled himself down next to Kieran and began. To be honest, I wanted the first slot, but Dragon Boy got there before I did. And you wanted the first slot because... Matthew smirked. Bragging rights. Oh my god, you're terrible! Kieran giggled. Like you wouldn't do the same thing. Kieran started to giggle again, and Matthew playfully shoved her. Anyway, he continued, that didn't work out, and Alphonse already claimed the second slot, so I decided to get the third. I was already there anyway. Kieran shrugged. Makes sense. Well, that's my story. Matthew rose from the bed. We don't need to have sex if you don't want to, Kieran. Oh, hold on! Kieran grabbed Matthew's shirt. I kind of imagined us... Matthew cocked an eyebrow. Oh? He sat back down at the bed, a little closer to Kieran this time. What would I be doing in these fantasies of yours? Well... Kieran turned her head away and pulled up her hood. She hesitated. She took a deep breath. You'd pin me down, tie me up, and fuck me. Matthew smiled as he pulled down Kieran's hood. So you're into that sort of thing? Kieran kept her eyes to the ground and nodded. Matthew couldn't help but notice Kieran's now tomato-red face. I never expected that from you, he teased. Kieran managed to finally make eye contact with Matthew and smiled sheepishly. I just like the idea of being dominated, I guess. I see. Matthew cupped Kieran's cheek and brought her face close to his. He glanced over at the various items on Kieran's desk. I'll get the rope while you get undressed, he whispered. Kieran's eyes widened. Yeah, okay. Matthew scooted off the bed and grabbed 2 coils of rope from the desk. Meanwhile, Kieran quickly tore away every bit of clothing she had on and sat on the bed, hardly containing her excitement. Matthew turned around and noticed Kieran's hickeys and scratch marks. Oh, yeah, you're definitely into this sort of thing. Kieran rolled her eyes and Matthew approached her. Ready? Kieran nodded. Let's go. Matthew crawled onto the bed and on top of Kieran, straddling her hips. He positioned her arms above her head and close to the bed frame. Kieran's entrance leaked in anticipation. Matthew took a coil of rope and wrapped a length of it around Kieran's wrist and on the bed frame. Not too tight, is it? He asked. Kieran wiggled her wrist around and shook her head. No, but... She blushed. She blushed harder. It'd be a little tighter. Matthew grinned and tightened the loop around her wrist. He then tied her other wrist to the bed frame in a similar fashion to the first. Kieran moaned softly from being restrained. The muscles in her lower body began to tighten. Matthew placed a hand on her breast and fondled it as he leaned in for a kiss. Kieran closed her eyes and kissed him back, humming happily. Matthew broke the kiss and lowered his lips to Kieran's nipple. His tongue lightly flicked against it until it perked up, begging for more attention. Kieran cried out as Matthew sucked on her sensitive mound and continued rubbing the other. His other hand traced down her side, then to between her legs, making her shiver. His fingers circled around her soaking opening. He brought his lips up to Kieran's ear, letting his warm breath puff against it. Ah, you're already so wet, Kieran. Matthew, please, Kieran mewed. Matthew dragged his finger to her clit and rubbed it slowly. Please, what? Kieran squirmed underneath him and pulled against her restraints. Please. Matthew planted his lips on a clear spot in Kieran's neck, nibbling and sucking on it until a little purple mark was left on her skin. He continued to mark Kieran up until she finally gasped, Please fuck me, Matthew. Matthew smirked and disrobed himself completely, tossing his clothes onto the floor. He hiked Kieran's legs up and slowly pushed his throbbing length inside her. She bit her lip and sharply inhaled in response. Matthew started pumping into her slow and steady. How's this? You can be more rough with me, Kieran replied breathlessly. Matthew complied and thrusted into Kieran's entrance with more force and a faster rhythm. Kieran's eyes squeezed shut, and she cried louder and louder with each of Matthew's thrusts. Her hands and toes curled up as the pleasure overwhelmed her. Matthew, oh God, Matthew! I'm gonna come! Matthew picked up his pace and groaned. Go on, Kieran. Come for me. I've got you. Every muscle in Kieran's body tensed until one last thrust from Matthew sent her over the edge. She cried out one last time as the tension inside her released. She melted into the mattress, panting. Matthew grunted as he continued to buck into Kieran. He tightly grasped the bed sheets, and with one final thrust he collapsed on top of Kieran and grinned. How was that? Kieran smiled back. Good. Really good. The two took a few minutes to catch their breath. Once the energy came back to them, Matthew got up, untied Kieran, and climbed out of the bed to gather his clothes. Kieran sat up and reflected back on what just happened. You were... gentle. Kieran paused and shook her head. No, that's not it. Accommodating, maybe? Matthew grinned. Surprised? Kieran thought back to her two previous partners and compared them to Matthew. Sure, they were a lot more passionate, but Matthew had a delicateness to his actions. She nodded and Matthew chuckled. Just wanted to make sure you enjoyed yourself, that's all. Kieran smiled. You know, I kind of wish we talked more before this. You're a pretty cool guy. He ruffled her hair. You're not so bad yourself. As she lightly rubbed her rope-burned wrists, Kieran spoke up. Hey, Matthew? Matthew answered back as he dressed himself. I was just thinking. Kieran took a moment to phrase what she was about to say just right. How would you feel about hanging out sometime? You know, outside of this. He smirked. Are you asking me out on a date? Kieran shrugged and smiled coyly. It can be a date if you want it to be. Matthew paused, then nodded to himself. He turned to Kieran. A date sounds wonderful. He put on the last of his clothing and knelt down in front of Kieran. Care to discuss this further tomorrow morning? Sounds good to me, Kieran said. Matthew took Kieran's hand, kissed her fingers, and stood. Until next time. Kieran beamed. Yep. Matthew approached the door and opened it. He turned back and waved goodbye to Kieran. She gave him a small wave and smile. With that, Matthew left Kieran's room with a blush and a smile on his face. That's the end of that chapter. My favoritism is definitely showing. Alright. So, we're gonna end the stream off there. And I'm gonna, right after the stream ends, I'm gonna post that officially. Yeah, poor Alphonse, honestly. Anyway, this is gonna get published on AO3 as soon as the stream is over. Thank you all so much for watching and listening to me read my fanfics. Tomorrow, I think I'm gonna continue with this. I think I'm gonna read the rest of my fics tomorrow. Same time, same place, you know. Tomorrow we will be reading... hold on, where is it? What will we be reading tomorrow? Tomorrow, we will be reading... we'll be reading Kissing Practice. We'll also be reading To Layla, and probably end it off with Simple Sailor Suit. I'm not going to read Another Day since it is kind of a personal fic for me, and I don't really feel comfortable with sharing it. You guys can read it on your own time, but I just don't feel comfortable with sharing it on stream. But yeah, we're going to be reading those 3 fics tomorrow. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow with more fanfiction reading. Goodbye!